This man is walking down the street, chattering on the phone, saying he's never felt anything. He says it's been like that since day one, and that love is like an all-encompassing spectrum. But regardless, he still plans to marry Yumin because she can bring real change to his family. So he's willing to tell her every day that he's madly in love with her. He's willing to do whatever it takes. What he doesn't know is that she's just around the corner, feeding a stray kitten, and has heard every word he said. During the Christmas holidays, Yumin and Yizian are in a coffee shop. The shop is packed, and a few girls at the next table are gossiping about the latest celebrity scandal. Kim Yizian is staring intently at his tablet, while Chu Yumin just gazes silently out the window. He asks if she's thought about where to hold the wedding. She doesn't answer, just keeps telling herself she can handle all this while recalling that terrible feeling. Yumin remembers saying that being number one suited her best, and asking Yizian if he was really going to marry her, while her boyfriend said that marrying her was the luckiest thing that ever happened to him. He always whispered sweet nothings to her, and she always bought it all, never knowing things would turn out this way. Yizian caresses Yumin's hand, telling her he's only gentle with her. Finally making up her mind, she smiles and tells her fiancé that she's had enough of him. She wants to make him feel the same pain that he inflicted on her. Yumin musters her courage and tells her fiancé to forget about the wedding. The people in the coffee shop, hearing the couple's conversation, watch intently as the situation unfolds. Kim Yizian wants to know what made her suddenly change her mind. Still smiling, she tells him he doesn't deserve her. The girls at the next table are dumbfounded, completely captivated by the drama unfolding. The baristas also stop what they're doing, shocked that she would do something like this on Christmas. Yumin decides to cut it short and tells him to drop it. 3 months later, a couple is strolling down the street, lost in their own little world. Suddenly, a girl walks past them, pale as a ghost, nearly scaring them out of their wits. Yumin, wearing an old hoodie, her face tired and haggard, struggles to work, dragging a heavy bag. She glances at the happy couple, remembering when she used to be just like them. She finds herself feeling jealous, realizing she's still not over the breakup. Not even close. After all, she had gone through the end of a 6-year relationship, where all her efforts suddenly became meaningless. Back at the office, it's business as usual, with everyone waiting for the boss to show up. When the boss bursts in late, the girls jump up from their seats. They watch the exhausted manager drag herself across the office, dropping fabric samples all over the floor, and urge her to take a break. As Yumin heads to the break room, the girls scramble to clean up the mess and gossip about what's wrong with her. They're worried she's been overworking herself lately, looking paler by the day. The girls worry that something is wrong with the company, even considering they might need to start looking for new jobs. Yumin overhears their conversation and tries to pull herself together, realizing it's ridiculous to fall apart like this over an ex. She can't let the company she poured her heart and soul into be ruined over something like this. So, our heroine decides to take a short nap to recharge. But she doesn't lie down for long before getting up, angry at herself for being affected by that jerk. Just then, Jae enters the break room to see if Yumin is feeling any better. The heroine smiles and admits she feels much better now. Jae says, "I was so scared when you walked in the office, so I made you some hot tea." She tells Yumin to take it easy and not push herself so hard, or she'll ruin her health. Jae knows she's been burying herself in work to forget the bad breakup, but this is too much. She gets an idea to take Yumin out after work. That influencer girl we know, the one who promotes our bags for free, it's her birthday today. Jae suggests Yumin change clothes after work and go unwind, and she agrees. That night, the girls arrive at a bar packed with bloggers and other celebrities. The birthday girl, So Yeon, greets them with a big smile, thanking them for coming despite their busy schedules. Yumin offers to buy her a drink, but she needs to use the restroom first. "I'll go save us a spot, okay? You could just come find me later." "Gosh, it's been so long since I've been to a party like this. I'm a little nervous." Yumin grabs some snacks, finds an empty table, and starts observing the people she's seen online. Suddenly, she notices a man sitting alone at the next table. She asks if he's a friend of the birthday girl, but he just gives a short no. Yumin fires off questions, trying to keep the conversation going, but he just answers with 1 or 2 words. Not only does he not even glance at her, but he suddenly tells her to stop hitting on him. After saying this, the man finally turns to Yumin, revealing his face. She decides to give up and not talk to him anymore. But then he suddenly leans in close, staring at her intently, which startles her. The stranger asks if they've met somewhere before, but Yumin can't recall any such thing. Why the sudden change in attitude from this guy? A minute ago, he wouldn't even look at me. He keeps asking if I'm some kind of celebrity, but I tell him I'm just a regular person. He's obviously mistaken me for someone else, because our conversation ends there. The phone rings, and a stranger answers it. Suddenly, he jumps up from his chair and dashes for the exit, knocking over his chair on the way. He drops his wallet on his way out, and I see it and pick it up off the floor. I find an ID card inside with the name Hyundo, so I chase after him to return it. I can't find him anywhere and start to worry if he'll be okay without his wallet. Just as I'm about to give up looking for Hyundo and hand the wallet in at the bar, I hear voices from an alley. I see him talking to someone I can't see. The girl's face is hidden under the brim of her hat, and she admits to seeing Hyundo on Taehyun's social media. The man is angry. How many times do I have to say it for you to get it and stay away from me? Hearing him say he only dated her out of pity and never loved her, Yumin's mind flashes back to her own past. The man confesses he can't take it anymore, that he's tired of her act. He tells the girl to stop playing dumb and acting so pathetic. Hyundo suggests they end it here and go their separate ways. But the girl is convinced he'll stay by her side for life and tell her he loves her again. He says he might have done that before, but he's tired of pretending to love her. The man is tired of this terrible love charade, having suffered for years pretending to have feelings. Suddenly, Yumin steps out from the corner and throws the man's wallet, hitting him squarely in the back of the head. To her, the worst kind of partner is one who lies about love and deceives the other person. This is exactly what her ex-boyfriend, the man she dated for 6 years, did to her. He told her he loved her and wanted to marry her only because he saw Yumin as his meal ticket. Yizian thought it was a way to repay her kindness, but it only made things worse. It's not until this moment, as Hyundo approaches and stares at her intently, that she realizes what she's just done. Song Jae-hee comes out of the restroom, trying to find Yumin, who had promised to save a seat. Finally, she sees her friend talking to some strange man. Just then, a blonde man walks up behind her and looks in the same direction. Jae-hee turns around, startled by the stranger standing so close. The man starts to apologize, explaining he was looking at his friend and didn't see her there. Jae-hee asks if his friend is the man now sitting next to her friend. When she confirms this and finds out he's single, she happily points out that her friend is single too. The man replies that he's single too, and that this could be a lucky encounter for them both. Realizing he's flirting with her, Jae-hee wonders if it's okay, since he looks younger than her. Just then, they both notice that their friends have suddenly disappeared. Hyundo is angry, thinking the girl is stalking him, and confront her about who she is. Yumin tries to explain that she was indeed following him, but not in the creepy way he thinks. She starts to sweat because he might have gotten the wrong idea. She pulls her hat down lower, trying to hide as Hyundo interrogates her, trying to figure out if she recorded anything. Then she turns and walks away without a word, leaving him to deal with his stalker. To defend herself, Yumin tells Hyundo to look at what she threw at him. She's angry because he thought she was following him like a rat when she was just trying to return his wallet. Hyundo sighs, then turns to find that the girl he was arguing with is gone. He realizes that this person who returned his wallet obviously doesn't know who he was just talking to. So he apologizes to Yumin for his hasty conclusion. He tries to thank her for returning the wallet, but she refuses to accept his gratitude. Hyundo comments that her way of returning lost items is quite unique. He asks, with a hint of sarcasm, if she always throws things at the back of people's heads. Yumin wants to tell him that the way he spoke to his girl really pissed her off, but she knows she needs to apologize, so she asks for Hyundo's forgiveness. Deep down, she doesn't regret it all, and the man knows it completely. Yumin decides to head back to the party, and Hyundo follows her. Taehyun shows Jae-hee pictures of the coffee shop he and his friend are renovating and suggests she stop by sometime. Yumin and Hyundo return to the bar, and her friend wonders where she went. After a brief introduction, the girls go to get some drinks. Jae-hee can't wait to find out where Yumin disappeared to with a stranger. She explains that nothing really happened between them. She omits the interesting details, saying only that she found his dropped wallet and returned it to him. Taehyun is also curious about what his friend was doing with the girl. But Hyundo dodges the question, asking instead why his friend posted a picture of him online. Taehyun had actually posted a photo with the birthday girl, where Hyundo was also visible, though I don't know how he found out. Without an account, the friend says his goodbyes, ready to leave the party. Taehyun asks him to stay for a drink with the girls, since their coffee shop is under renovation anyway. But Hyundo isn't in the mood and refuses the offer. The assistant asks Su Jong, who is getting into a car, how long she plans to wear that wig. The girl was lost in thought and completely forgot she was still wearing her disguise. She takes off her hat and wig and reaches for her phone. When the assistant asks if her talk with Hyundo went well, she nods and snaps a picture. The car drives past brightly lit billboards covered with the face of the famous actress and model, Hong Soo-young. She can't shake the feeling that Hyundo was being intentionally mean to her. The assistant is shocked that Soo-young isn't bothered by being treated that way, but she's sure Hyundo isn't the type to abandon her over something like this. She feels he's probably sitting somewhere right now, waiting for her call. The assistant thinks she's being too confident and almost feels sorry for the man. Soo-young remembers a strange woman throwing something at the back of Hyundo's head and wonders who she was. Probably some anti-fan who followed her to cause trouble. But as Soo-young was leaving, she sensed the way that girl looked at Hyundo. More than she looked at her. The man is at home, sprawled on the sofa, drinking one beer after another. He recalls Soo-young calling him to the club, saying she'd wait for him outside, even in the freezing cold. Hyundo is furious with himself for running to her at her beck and call, like a fool. He swears to himself that from this day on, he won't even look if she calls again. The man receives a message from Taehyun, asking him to reconsider and come join them. He's drinking with the girls they met at the bar and assures his friend he'll have a great time if he comes. To prove how much fun they're having, Taehyun sends Hyundo a picture. The man is looking at the girl who hit him with the wallet, and she still looks so familiar. Hyundo can't remember who she is. Maybe she came to their coffee shop once. He dismisses the thought. They'll never see each other again anyway, so it doesn't matter. At that time, Hyundo couldn't have imagined that these assumptions would be shattered in just 1 week, and that girl will be standing there, pressed tightly against his chest. Soo-young is scrolling through social media, humming a song. The photo she posted yesterday already has over 30,000 likes. She clicks on Taehyun's profile, hoping to find Hyundo in one of his pictures. Since the man is basically a ghost online, she's running out of options to find out what he's up to. Just then, Su Jong's assistant walks in, bringing her new stylist. Meanwhile, the actress is still debating whether to text Hyundo or if he'll just ignore her again. The assistant introduces Soo-young to Haekyung. Haekyung is completely starstruck. They greet each other, both saying they look forward to working together. The assistant suggests they all head downstairs to get ready to leave. Haekyung is ecstatic and can't wait to tell Yumin that she'll be working with Soo-young. Hyundo receives a text from his ex, asking where he moved to, but he decides to ignore it, as Soo-young knows perfectly well he moved and she was angry about it. The man was the one who broke up with her, so he feels there's nothing to talk about now. He wants his ex to get a taste of what it's like to wait for someone who doesn't text back. Spotting his favorite kitten on the street, Hyundo takes out his phone to snap a picture. Just then, Taehyun calls, telling him he's invited the girls from the bar to their coffee shop for dinner tonight. Over lunch, Jae-hee tells Yumin about the invitation. The coffee shop is opening in a few days, and Taehyun wants to treat them to a meal. The last time the three of them were drinking together, the man mentioned he works at his friend's coffee shop. Hyundo. Yumin feels awkward, knowing she's about to meet the man she hit with a wallet on their first encounter. She refuses to go, but Jae-hee persuades her, since the coffee shop is nearby and the food is said to be amazing. She thinks the reason Yumin is saying no is because something happened between her and the man that day. Without revealing the truth, she just denies everything. So Jae-hee assumes it's her ex, Yizian, acting up, which completely annoys her friend. Still, she manages to convince her, and Taehyun is happy to see them at the coffee shop that evening. Jae-hee thanks him for the invitation, while Yumin stands awkwardly behind, looking uncertain. She's stunned by the coffee shop's cool design, and he agrees the renovation was really worth it. Jae-hee hands him a bouquet of flowers, saying she felt bad coming empty-handed. Yumin is terrified. She never thought she'd meet Hyundo again. With a trembling hand, she gives him a bottle of red wine as a grand opening gift. After the girls sit down, Hyundo asks Taehyun to get some different glasses. Yumin glances out the window and realizes the coffee shop is right near her office. Her ex used to live around here, but she shouldn't run into him. Before they know it, the girls' table is filled with all sorts of dishes. Yumin takes a bite and is stunned by how delicious it is. Taehyun says they've barely done any promotion, but word of mouth about their delicious food has spread like wildfire, so the place is always packed. Yumin is surprised that a man like Hyundo could cook such amazing food. It seems cooking skills and personality don't always go hand in hand, because she can't stop eating. Taehyun posts a picture of the girls' gifts on social media and tags them. Jae suggests they follow each other, but Hyundo says he's not interested in that stuff. Taehyun even runs the restaurant's main page. She admits she's been thinking about deleting her account lately, but he tells her not to. She complains that her exes are always snooping on her online. Taehyun thinks it's a good thing that people can sort out their feelings after a breakup. After a breakup, he had an ex-girlfriend who, even after they broke up, spread rumors that he was still in love with her and missed her like crazy. Yumin thinks that kind of behavior is a direct reflection of how the person saying it truly feels. Some people are just too proud to admit the truth. Hearing this, Hyundo suddenly understands Su Jong's behavior. He wonders if she'll ever be truly honest with him. Yumin can sense a sudden gloomy atmosphere surrounding Hyundo. To lighten the mood, she asks Jae how long it usually takes for her exes to contact her after a breakup. According to her, it ranges from a few weeks to a few months. Jae believes there's only one way to get an ex to text you faster. You have to let him see how happy you are with someone else. The girls thank the men for dinner and promise to bring their friends next time. Jae and Taehyun's taxi arrives, and they leave together since they live in the same direction. Yumin's ride hasn't arrived yet, and Hyundo is about to walk home since he lives nearby. The girls say their goodbyes and promise to text each other when they get home. After asking Hyundo to look after Yumin while she waits for her taxi, Jae hops in her car and leaves. The man suggests she go to the main road to catch a cab there. As they walk towards the main road, there's only one thing on the girl's mind. She wonders how Kim Yizian would feel if he saw her happy with another man. Maybe the man who didn't even get angry when she broke up with him wouldn't care who she was with at all. Our girl takes out her phone to check the time, but when she looks up, she freezes. She's completely stunned. Coming around the corner right towards them is Kim Yizian and one of his colleagues. It sounds like they just came from a company dinner, and he's walking the girl home because she had a bit too much to drink. She can't believe she's seeing Kim Yizian at a time like this. 13 years ago, a group of girls gathered outside the school, all wanting to catch a glimpse of someone in the distance. Back then, Yumin and Jae were high school seniors, just watching the whole scene. She took a few steps forward, trying to figure out what the commotion was about. It turned out everyone was looking at the ridiculously handsome son of the literature teacher. She has no doubt now that the person walking towards Yumin is Kim Yizian. She wanted to see him, but she wasn't ready, so she scrambles to find a solution. Finally deciding she has to hide, she runs in front of Hyundo and buries her face in his chest, using his jacket as cover. As they pass by, Kim Yizian's colleague remarks on what a cute couple they are. Meanwhile, Hyundo has no idea what Yumin is doing. He tells her to back off, but she just begs him to shut up and stay like this for a few more minutes. Just then, Yumin overhears Kim Yizian telling his colleague that he has a girlfriend. After she's sure they've finally turned the corner, our girl peeks out from under Hyundo's jacket, leaving him completely bewildered. He lets out a sigh of relief and tells her to let go of him. Now that she's done, but Yumin, holding onto him tightly, suddenly whispers that she dated that man for 6 whole years. The ominous feeling Hyundo had in that moment was completely justified, because a second later, the girl starts to sob. Now, they're sitting together on a park bench, and Yumin has finished another can of beer. So Hyundo now understands that the girl wasn't trying to get close to him. She was just looking for a place to hide when she saw her ex. She's blushing furiously, apologizing for using him like that. Still, he's a bit confused as to why Yumin had to hide in the first place, as if she had done something wrong. She doesn't even know why she reacted that way, especially when just a few minutes ago, she was fantasizing about running into Kim Yizian. But when he actually appeared, the only brilliant idea she could come up with was to dive under Hyundo's jacket. Presumably, her subconscious was at work, trying to protect her from another wave of emotional turmoil over Kim Yizian. Yumin and Hyundo sit quietly on the bench, each lost in their own thoughts. The man suddenly tells her she should have just said hello as if nothing was wrong. That way, Kim Yizian might have thought she was dating someone else. Yumin thinks, why didn't I think of that? I was standing right next to a man. She's afraid that was her only chance. Hyundo is tired, so he suggests it's time for Yumin to go home. She apologizes for drinking too much and acting like a fool. She stumbles up from the bench and follows behind Hyundo. She can't figure out if he's just being polite or if he simply doesn't care. In that alley, he was harsh with the other girl, but tonight, he calmly put up with all of Yumin's mess. She suddenly realizes she can actually take Hyundo's advice, but she needs a man by her side to do it. So she asks him if he's seeing anyone right now. Yumin suggests Hyundo should hang around their neighborhood when he has free time. She says she's not trying to seduce him. She just needs him to pretend they're dating. She doesn't have anyone she can actually start a relationship with right now, and even if she did, Yumin isn't in the right state of mind for it. In her view, Hyundo is the perfect candidate for the role because there's no way he could ever fall in love with her. The man says nothing to her proposal, and just then, she feels dizzy and crouches down. Hyundo turns to the girl, stares at her for a moment, and then tells her to get up. Since Yumin doesn't move, he turns and walks away. But a minute later, the man returns and asks the girl what she can do for him. When Yumin looks confused, he asks again what she's willing to give him in return. The girl stumbles to her feet, unsure of what he could possibly want, so she offers him money. Looking at the shining poster of Su Jong behind her, he admits to Yumin that he wants to use her too. 5 years ago, Hyundo was doing his usual morning cleaning. Around the apartment, freshly washed women's clothes were hanging neatly on the balcony. Hyundo made breakfast, set the table, and then headed to the bedroom. He paused at the door for a moment, admiring the sleeping Su Jong. He walked to the bed, sat beside her, and just kept looking at her. She opened her eyes and smiled at the man who had been busy since dawn. Hyundo jokingly threatened that if Su Jong didn't get up now, they couldn't eat and he would bite off her fingers. She promised she'd be right up, especially with the smell of her favorite food wafting from the kitchen. Yumin is slumped over her desk, suffering from a terrible hangover. Jae offers to get her some medicine or food, but she refuses both. Mixing drinks last night was a terrible decision. Apparently, Jae is calling her friend out because they only drank red wine together yesterday. Yumin doesn't want to lie, but she's too embarrassed to tell the truth. Her colleagues save her in the nick of time, asking if they went on a double date last night. While Jae is scolding the other girls for being too nosy, a message pops up on Yumin's phone. Hyundo is asking to meet up when she's free. 30 minutes later, Yumin is already on her way to the coffee shop where they agreed to meet. She feels a bit awkward after last night and is thinking about how to smooth things over. When she arrives, she looks around as Hyundo told her he was already there. She finally spots him sitting in a corner of the coffee shop, even though there were plenty of other empty seats. When she asks how long he's been waiting, Hyundo says not long. He immediately gets up to get them drinks. Yumin doesn't have time to tell him she's not feeling well and needs something other than coffee, but Hyundo brings her a warm cup of tea, which is exactly what she needs right now. She figures he must have been exhausted last night because she was so drunk. I mean, the man had a hard time getting her babbling about some promise into a taxi. She apologizes for the nonsense she said yesterday, but Hyundo cuts her off, suggesting they go ahead with their agreement and pretend to be a couple. Yumin thought he only agreed with her yesterday because she was drunk and he wanted to get rid of her. But Hyundo wants to use her too and sees no problem with a fake relationship. So he was serious yesterday, which takes her by surprise. Now that the man has agreed, she decides to elaborate on her plan. She wants the man to see how happy she is with another man. He lives near Hyundo's coffee shop, so they need to have a date there at least once a week. Yumin thought this would be a piece of cake, since all they had to do was have lunch and take a walk together. Her plan was basically an escape from reality, as she couldn't accept the fact that she wasn't loved. Even though she was the one who dumped him, Yumin still wanted to see Kim Lee-seon looking regretful. Hyundo, on the other hand, couldn't care less about the situation or her plan. Now, the man wanted her to hear what he wanted in return. He would take pictures every time they met, and if she was really against it, he would never take a picture of her face. He was going to create a social media account and start posting pictures, and that was all Hyundo wanted from the girl in these meetings. He hoped that Yumin's very existence would annoy Su Jong. To our girl, his request seemed easy enough to fulfill. Yumin suddenly realized that Hyundo had the same goal as her, since he signed up for social media, something he had never done before. She guessed it was all because of the girl from the alley, but she didn't understand why he would do this, since he was the one who dumped her. But then again, wasn't she doing the same thing herself? Hyundo, not understanding why Yumin was looking at him like that, started arranging their meeting schedule. But when asked when all of this would end, she couldn't answer because she hadn't thought about it all. Yumin suggested that it would end when they both achieve their respective goals. Since this idea was met with a cold stare, she passed it off as a joke and proposed a 2-month deadline. They said their goodbyes, agreeing to start the plan on Sunday. Just as Hyundo was about to leave, Yumin called out to him and held out her hand. She knew she hadn't made a good first impression, but she was grateful that he was going along with her crazy plan. Hyundo thought to himself that she was actually quite cute when she smiled. He smirked, thinking he had to let Su Jong know about Yumin as soon as possible. Then he shook her hand. Tegan was chilling at the cafe, humming a tune while scrolling through his texts with Ji-hee from yesterday. He had asked her out for Sunday and was now worried he had come off a bit lame. I mean, Tegan wanted this older sister to fall for him, so he had to step up his game. Hyundo walked into the cafe, and his friend, startled by his sudden appearance, immediately hid his phone. Tegan claimed he came to work early to tidy up a bit before opening. Hyundo told him to study the menu. Seeing him appear so suddenly, his friend asked if he finally got a girlfriend. Tegan thought Hyundo's behavior was strange, always disappearing to who knows where and only answering his phone when he was outside. Suddenly, the guy got a notification that the head chef had followed him on social media. Tegan took this as another sign that Hyundo had a girlfriend, but he told him to calm down and get to work. That night, the guy came home exhausted from his friend's endless questions, but he swore he would never tell Tegan about meeting Yumin. An exhausted Hyundo collapsed onto the sofa. He turned on the TV, which happened to be playing a romance drama starring Su Jong. He received a message from Yumin, who had just realized that Sunday was tomorrow. Hyundo, seeing no need to delay, agreed to get started. On the TV screen, Su Jong asked the male lead if he was doing this to her because of the complex emotions of love and hate. Yumin was also watching the movie, and despite the top-notch acting, she found the plot a bit strange. A notification popped up, and she picked up her phone. Now, they had to finalize the time and place for their meeting. The next day, Yumin was waiting for Hyundo at the agreed-upon spot, and for some reason, he was late. She decided to wait a few more minutes before texting him. Suddenly, Hyundo called out to her from around the corner, startling her with his sudden appearance. Yumin suggested they take a walk before heading to the restaurant. She pointed in the direction they needed to go. There was a large crowd ahead, and their voices filled the entire street. All this noise mixed together brought back some bad memories for Hyundo of Su Jong yelling. He frowned and clutched his head, trying to shake the image from his mind. Seeing his expression, Yumin guessed that Hyundo might not be feeling well. She decided to explain why they had to meet here, of all places. This coffee street was a popular date spot for couples, so if Kim E-seon was on a date, they might run into him. But Hyundo suggested they go somewhere else today. Yumin was a little disappointed, but sooner or later, they would run into him in the coming months. The street was packed with couples, and the air was thick with sweetness. Yumin started to feel awkward because she and Hyundo were just walking around in complete silence. When she was with Kim E-seon, everything felt different, as if filled with sunshine and good times. Suddenly, the heroine twisted her ankle and started to fall. Hyundo reacted quickly and tried to catch her, but accidentally grabbed her face. Super awkward, the two of them froze for a moment, while the people around them whispered, saying that it would have been better for her to just fall than be embarrassed like this. A smiling waitress greeted the couple at the cafe entrance. Yumin, with Hyundo's handprint still on her face, told her it was just the two of them, and the waitress said they could sit wherever they wanted. The heroine told the man, who couldn't stop apologizing, to go grab a seat first, while she went to the restroom to fix her face. Hyundo kept saying sorry all the way, but she didn't think it was a big deal since he was just trying to help. The phone on the table rang, and when Kim E-seon glanced at it, he saw it was his sister calling. He answered the phone, telling her he was just cleaning. His sister wanted to know if he was coming home, but E-seon reminded her that their dad had forbidden him from coming home until he won Yumin back. Since he was grounded for life, the man suggested they meet somewhere like on the street. Glancing at a photo on the shelf, E-seon told Hai Jae-young to bring their dad along sometime too. Hyundo sat in the cafe with his head down, waiting for Yumin to come out of the restroom. Hearing the sound of a camera shutter from the next table, the guy jumped. He turned around and was relieved to see it was just a pair of girls taking a selfie. Yumin stared at the mark Hyundo's hand had left on her face. She knew he didn't mean to grab her. It was just a reflex, and he realized what he'd done afterward. The girl blamed herself more for almost falling because she was distracted. You can't blame the man for trying to help her and keep her from falling, right? Yumin suddenly had a bad feeling that Kim E-seon might be walking around nearby. What terrible timing. When she returned, Hyundo was sitting there with a gloomy expression. For a moment, she thought she was reliving yesterday. She noticed again that he was huddled in a corner, even though the window seats were empty. Yumin sat down across from him, apologizing for making Hyundo wait. A waitress came to their table to take their order. Hyundo was worried and asked if her face still hurt and if there was a bad bruise. But Yumin reassured him and showed him that there was barely a mark left. Hearing that he had created a social media account, she took out her phone to follow him. Yumin was surprised that Hyundo hadn't posted a single photo, but he was sure his ex would recognize it was him. She offered to help him take pictures, but he wasn't interested. He hated having his picture taken. Yumin dropped the idea and apologized to Hyundo. When the waitress brought their food, the girl offered to take a picture for him, just as he wanted. She moved back a little so he could get a better angle. Hyundo showed Yumin the photo, which showed the girl's hand in the background and all the dishes on the table. It looked exactly like a real date, and she even told him to post it online. Hyundo and Yumin started their lunch in complete silence. The man just ate, staring off into the distance, lost in his own thoughts. Yumin asked him to look at her and say something, because right now, they just looked like two people eating together. I mean, a happy girl in a new relationship shouldn't look like this, right? Yumin begged Hyundo to say anything, and she would take it from there. The man, not understanding why they were going to so much trouble, muttered under his breath and was about to bring up yesterday. She pretended to be cool, as if their conversation was incredibly interesting, waiting for him to spill the beans. Hyundo remembered her saying she wanted to look happy just to spite her ex. The girl smiled, guessing she must have looked pathetic doing that. Hyundo wondered if she wanted Isian to dump his new flame and come crying back to her. That was exactly what Yumin hoped for, but even if it didn't happen, his regret would be enough. The man felt that she was being honest with him, unlike most people. Although she already knew the answer, Yumin asked if Hyundo was after the same thing, but he dodged her question by asking what would happen if Kim Isian didn't contact her at all. After 2 months, Hyundo thought their efforts were a bit futile, as that ex would probably never appear in Yumin's life again. After lunch, the couple thanked the cafe manager and headed for the exit. They stepped outside and said their goodbyes until next time. Hyundo walked to the bus stop and hopped on when the bus arrived. He watched Yumin from the window, thinking that she hadn't shown her true emotions until they said goodbye. Hyundo wasn't trying to provoke a reaction. He was just triggered at some point. She was just like him, grasping at any chance she could get, and the feeling that overwhelmed him was disgust for a self so similar to his own. As he approached his building, Hyundo heard a kitten meowing and turned toward the sound. He saw a man squatting down, petting a small cat. He stood up, greeted Hyundo, and asked if he lived on the 5th floor. Although the man had never seen him before, he answered yes. It turned out to be Hyundo's downstairs neighbor. He admitted that he remembered the new tenant who had moved in last month. A month ago, Kim Isian was rushing to a party, but Jaeon wouldn't let her brother leave in peace. 2 months later, she was still trying to get him to say why he broke up with Yumin, to no avail. Hearing her brother was in a hurry, she got excited, guessing he had found someone else, and that's why he dumped the girl. But Kim Isian took a deep breath and explained he was just going to a gathering with friends. Jaeon was very disappointed that she still couldn't find out the real reason for the breakup. It was then that Kim Isian saw Hyundo for the first time, moving things into his new apartment. The man said he was sorry they hadn't run into each other until now, but today was a great opportunity to meet new people, and these guys were laying it on thick. Her kitten ran up to the cat, and she shooed them away from the crowd. While waiting for the elevator, the neighbor told Hyundo that the area was very friendly to stray cats. They both like cats. When they reached the 4th floor, Kim Isian said goodbye and got out of the elevator. Hyundo was pleased with the move. With cats for company and a nice neighbor, it was a pretty good deal for a hasty move. Yumin saw that he had posted a picture from the cafe on social media. She excitedly complained about the nonsense he had told her. He suddenly started frequently updating a profile he never cared about before, yet told her not to get too invested. Hyundo might think it's hard to win someone's heart with that kind of thing, but Yumin already knew. She knew better than anyone how hard it is to change a heart. Even though this plan was likely to be a mess, she had to see it through since she'd already started. Meanwhile, Tegan was sitting on a park bench, scrolling through social media. Seeing Hyundo's photo, he was annoyed that his friend was being secretive about his relationship with the girl. Even after he had asked, this was the first time he'd seen proof of Hyundo on a date, and now he was going to stalk his social media. Just then, Ji walked up to Tegan with a smile, apologizing for making him wait. When she asked what had surprised him so much, much. He said he had just seen something completely unexpected online. He couldn't wait to tell everyone, but first Tegan wanted to hear the whole story, straight from Hyundo's mouth. Yumin was in a business meeting, planning a spring promotion for the new products of the season. The women agreed to get in touch later about the schedule, and then said their goodbyes. As she was leaving the office, Yumin overheard a few girls in the hallway excitedly discussing something. When he asked what was going on, his colleague explained that a movie was being filmed nearby. Sun Chan and the famous actress Su Jong were said to be seen on the street now. Yumin rushed downstairs to see the stars for herself, and a crowd had already gathered around the set. The girl stood on her tiptoes, trying to catch a glimpse of her favorite actress through the onlookers. Finally, Yumin saw Su Jong, who seemed even more beautiful in person than on screen. The girl stared at the actress in awe, thrilled to see her in person, even if it was just from a distance. A passing Hai Jiang noticed Yumin in the crowd of fans and stopped. After confirming she wasn't mistaken, she ran over to greet the girl. When Yumin asked what Hai Jiang was doing here, she suggested they run an errand together and she would explain everything on the way. Taking Yumin's hand, the girl confessed she was really happy to see her, and Yumin replied that she was just about to call. Su Jong glared at Hai Jiang's back, asking where she had gone. The assistant said he had sent her to the car to get something. Su Jong told him to tell Hai Jiang to hurry back, as she had a question for her. The girl told Yumin that she was now the actress's stylist. She promised to get an autograph for her friend once she got closer to Su Jong. Yumin marveled at how much the girl had grown up and pointed out that she talked just like her brother. Hai Jiang still couldn't believe she and Kim Yi-seon were no longer together, but she stopped herself in time, apologizing for talking too much. Yumin reassured her it was okay and that her brother would probably be proud of her. Remembering her errand, Hai Jiang quickly said goodbye to her friend, promising to call her later. After getting what she needed from the car, the girl returned to the film set, which was in full swing. She went up to Su Jong, wondering why she was looking for her. According to the actress, she just hadn't seen Hai Jiang around and was a little worried. She noticed the girl had met a friend and was now worried she would be scolded for slacking off. Hai Jiang apologized, explaining that she was so happy about the chance encounter, but they just said a quick hello and parted ways immediately. But Su Jong wasn't about to scold her. She just commented that she and her friend must be very close. Hai Jiang said she had looked up to Yumin since she was little, but they had grown distant recently, so she was happy to see her. The manager called for the girl, and she apologized to Su Jong before going to work. The actress picked up her phone, went to Hyundo's profile, and checked who he was following. In the following list, Su Jong found Yumin and checked out the girl's profile. She had been wondering why Hyundo would go and sign up for social media, so now Su Jong understood that this was his way of showing her this girl. And on top of that, Yumin turned out to be Hai Jiang's friend. The actress found it hilarious. After a solid day's work, Hyundo was ready to go home. Tegan stopped him, wanted to find out if he had something to say. At first, Hyundo said no, but then he seemed to remember something. Now, the guy was on the edge of his seat waiting to hear, but instead of dropping a bombshell, his friend just praised Tegan as a valuable employee, saying that preparing for the opening was really hard work. Realizing Hyundo still hadn't answered his question, the guy told his friend to cut the crap. Tegan wanted to know who the girl on his profile was and if they were dating. Hyundo thought it was none of his business. Tegan had known him for over 4 years and had accepted the fact that the guy never talked about his personal life. Although the guy thought this was a special occasion, Hyundo said it was no big deal and left his friend to clean up the cafe. He walked out the door. Hyundo couldn't tell Tegan that he had dumped his celebrity girlfriend of 6 years in a fit of anger and was now in a fake relationship with a girl he barely knew. The guy had barely made it through the day, and there was more to come. As Hyundo got in his car, Yumin called to ask if he was free the night after next. She remembered him saying he was only free after work on weekdays, so it was fine if he was busy. 2 days later, Hyundo arrived at the bar where Yumin said her ex-boyfriend often hung out. She had already ordered drinks and was waiting for him at the bar. With a smile, Hyundo was surprised at how casually she greeted him. Yumin explained that when she doesn't work overtime, she gets off work earlier than him, so she came early today. She handed him a drink and some snacks, saying it was of course not as good as his cooking, but still pretty decent. Yumin told Hyundo to stop looking at her like she was crazy, because no man would look at his girlfriend that way. As they clinked glasses, he asked if her boyfriend was nearby since she was acting this way. She said she just wanted to be careful. In that case, Hyundo suggested she talk and laugh to herself like last time and not expect him to do the same. But Yumin thought it would be great if they could play the perfect couple together. This plan was a far cry from her original idea of just hanging out, but that didn't mean Hyundo had to act like he was under a gag order. He just needed to treat it like hanging out with someone he knew, so Yumin wouldn't have to pretend to be happy like before. Realizing she had been faking it, he asked how she could do that when she wasn't an actress. Yumin said it wasn't hard to act with body language. She smirked and offered to show him how to do it, even without any acting skills. Our girl downed another drink, cursing herself for clearly losing her mind. Saying something like that, she needed to get a grip and try to keep her mouth shut for once. She shouldn't have taken the bait, but what's done is done, right? Yumin had nothing to lose at this point, so she decided to give Hyundo a real acting lesson. No matter what he thought, she was going to prove that she was very serious about this plan. She gazed at him, forcing herself to believe that she was in love with this man from now on. Looking around at the other people, Hyundo realized that couples really do seem to glow when they're in love. He had never been told in his life that he looked like a happy person. From the beginning, he had kept his relationship a secret from everyone except one person. Yumin wondered what Hyundo was thinking about so intently, and he was startled when she asked him. He told her she didn't need to pretend to be in love and happy, but she acted as if she had no idea what he was talking about. Yumin laughed and said Hyundo was talking nonsense, reaching out to touch his shoulder. The man tensed up at her sudden intimacy. When Hyundo finally realized she was just starting to play her game, Yumin turned to the stage. The intermission was over, and the singer returned to the mic, ready to belt out a song. Now Hyundo understood what this kind of provocation would lead to, and Yumin's reaction seemed completely natural to him. The man took a picture to post on social media. Later, his attention was caught by a headline that had just been posted online. Sun Chan and Su Jong, the main characters of the recent scandal, were smiling for a photo at their new movie premiere. Hyundo bet she already knew about his new account, but she was the type to play it cool for a while. Yumin saw him looking at news about her favorite actress and excitedly leaned in to see his phone. She asked if Hyundo had a thing for Su Jong, a question that made him jump as if he'd been zapped. He started shaking his head frantically, trying to convince Yumin that he didn't like the actress at all. She stuck to her role, smiling and asking if she was prettier or the actress was, and who was more his type. Not getting an answer, Yumin touched Hyundo's shoulder again, and he just looked at her in silence. He noticed how convincing her performance was to others, but told her to stop acting in front of him. The man called her by the wrong name again, and Yumin thought she finally understood why he kept doing it. Hyundo couldn't give any other explanation besides having a bad memory for names. But she thought he was just shy and couldn't bring himself to say her name out loud. The man was annoyed by this claim, and when she asked him to say her name again, he said it correctly without hesitation. Hyundo told Yumin to stop this weird act. Now that he had seen how good she was at pretending to be happy, she demanded that he cooperate with her from now on, as she was fulfilling her part of the deal. Hyundo hadn't expected Yumin to be so determined. Perhaps it was this uncomfortable familiarity mixed with a bit of curiosity that made him waver. Now he was ready, as she said, to make small talk and give predictable reactions. That kind of behavior was enough for Yumin, but she warned that if Hyundo started making snide remarks again, she wouldn't take it lying down. The man looked at her with a hint of concern and asked what she planned to do. Yumin leaned in closer and whispered that if he did that, she would take charge of all the flirting. She would bombard his phone with texts nonstop every day and basically live at his cafe to completely freak him out. She planned to lay it on thick, just like the other day. Basically, she would be even more of a nuisance than she was now, and he should be shaking in his boots. If Hyundo didn't believe her, he could try acting like before, and he would see for himself. After hearing her threat, the man smiled and promised to try to cooperate with her. They clinked glasses and drank, sealing the deal. Yumin, annoyed that they hadn't run into Kim E-Sean again today, thanked Hyundo for staying out so late with her. He called a taxi for her, while he planned to walk home since he lived nearby. While waiting for the car, Yumin noticed a mole on his earlobe and joked that now she wasn't just jealous of the one on his eyebrow. The taxi arrived, and she said goodbye to Hyundo. Left alone, the man touched his earlobe, the one Yumin found cute. Waking up in the morning, Hyundo washed his face and stared at himself in the mirror. For years ago, Su Jong told him that his mole looked like the mark of an ear piercing. She thought an earring would look good on him and suggested he get one. Then she suggested an eyebrow piercing, and Hyundo would agree to all her suggestions. Noticing his hair was getting long, Su Jong said he needed a haircut. Then after moments thought, she suggested he could actually grow his hair out even longer. Hyundo's gaze seemed too sharp to her, so she decided she wanted to soften it. She didn't want people to be intimidated by her boyfriend, so she thought it was a good idea. Yumin and he were taking their friends to the cafe they had been asking about. Tegan was happy to see the girls at the door. After his routine greeting to Yumin, the guy called for Hyundo. She didn't want to bother him while he was working, saying she would say hi later. But Hyundo heard his friend's voice, turned around, and saw Yumin, just giving a nod. Then realized how close this place was to the office, and Tegan was like, yo, come for lunch more often. Then he caught himself, invited all the girls, and promised a discount. As Tegan took He's order, Yumin noticed a flirty vibe between them. Somehow, she felt that something was going on between these two. The other girls also noticed the special attention the man was giving their colleague. He told them to shut up and eat, since she had satisfied their curiosity by bringing them here. But the girls wouldn't let it go, and now they wanted to know if the man who was cooking had a thing for Yumin. She was very embarrassed and started denying any relationship between them. Even though she said there was nothing between her and Hyundo, he noticed they had been going on dates. Yumin couldn't exactly say they were fake dating, so she had to be as secretive as possible. She was glad Hyundo wasn't the type to go around blabbing. But to her surprise, her friend was disappointed by the news, as she thought they would make a great couple. Yumin didn't think so. Hyundo's looks and personality were far from her ideal type. Still, he saw something between them, and besides, you don't always end up with your dream guy. Yumin felt the only thing they had in common was being hung up on their exes, which might be why it looked like there was something between them to outsiders. She decided to play along to get her friend off her back, promising she'd consider it if he made the first move. Just then, Hyundo walked up to the table, interrupting their conversation. He couldn't find Taejun, so he decided to bring the food out himself. It wasn't until he placed the plate on the table that Yumin realized he wasn't a waiter. The man just stared at her with his usual expressionless face. Feeling awkward, Yumin greeted Hyundo and introduced him to her work colleagues. She was mortified, as he must have heard what she had just said. After greeting the guests, the chef turned back to the kitchen to get the rest of the dishes. Yumin desperately gestured to him that she didn't mean any of what she had just said. Although he saw her, he pretended not to, simply smiling and wishing them a good meal before leaving the table. Yumin was annoyed by his smug smile and the way he completely ignored her signals. Her colleagues immediately started gushing about how handsome Hyundo was and how talented he was as a chef. The owner coolly returned to the kitchen to continue cooking as if nothing had happened. Seeing this, Yumin felt a bit better, as it seemed Hyundo wasn't holding a grudge. As the girls ate lunch and chatted about various topics, the heroine picked up her phone. After serving the food, Hyundo was in the kitchen wiping down the counter. He knew Yumin was just putting on an act for her friend when she said she'd consider it if he made the first move. Suddenly, he received a text message and quickly glanced at the heroine. Seeing the phone in her hand, he assumed the text was from her. In fact, Hyundo felt there was no need to explain himself after what she said, since he knew she wasn't serious. But in reality, it was So Jung who had texted him, begging him to come quickly because she had fainted and was now at the hospital. Taejun's gaze was fixed on Jae-hee as he told the girls to let him know if they needed anything. Yumin received a message from Haekyung, and her mind raced with possibilities. She apologized to her friends, saying she'd start eating as soon as she replied to the message. Haekyung said she was sorry they couldn't talk more the other day, and suggested treating Yumin to a meal to celebrate her new job. The heroine thought this was a perfect opportunity to ask about how Kim Yizian was doing and tell Haekyung about her new relationship. Just then, she was startled by the sound of the door being slammed open. Hyundo hurriedly told Taejun to close up the shop by himself tonight. He didn't answer his surprised friend's questions, just told him to take care of the guests, and then disappeared around the corner. The guests stared in confusion at his retreating back, not understanding why the chef had suddenly abandoned the cafe and run off. Taejun apologized for the commotion and asked everyone to continue enjoying their food. Yumin froze in her seat as the scene reminded her of her first meeting with Hyundo, when he had stormed out of the bar just like that, knocking over a chair. She had a bad feeling that he was going back to his ex-girlfriend again. Hopping out of the taxi, Hyundo smoothed down his hair, which was messy from running. He greeted So Young's manager, who had come out to meet him. Hyundo bombarded him with questions about her condition, trying to figure out why she had fainted. The manager told him not to worry and promised to fill him in on the details inside, even though there were no reporters around. Walking into the building, he noticed the security was very tight. According to the manager, So Jung had been taking on too much work lately, accepting almost everything that came her way. The result was that she was completely exhausted. Halfway through work today, her legs suddenly gave out, and she couldn't stand up on her own. Opening the apartment door, the manager guessed that So Jung was probably asleep now. She wasn't injured, but the doctor told her she needed to get some proper rest for a while. Hyundo walked into the room where the girl was sleeping, sat down by the bed, and pulled the blanket over her. She woke up, happy that he came running the moment she got sick. So Jung, feeling a bit better, rubbed her eyes and asked Hyundo if he had missed her, as this was the first time they had seen each other since their fight. The man didn't answer, asking her the same question back. She said she had waited patiently because he would come back to her anyway. Noticing how tired she was, Hyundo suggested she get some sleep, but she asked him to stay and look around the house, since it was his first time there, promising they could talk later. The man told So Jung to get some sleep and then left the room. He asked the manager to show him to the kitchen so he could cook something for the girl and her assistant. The manager, knowing he'd be dead meat if So Jung woke up and Hyundo was gone, begged him to stay until she woke up. But the man felt there was no need, as they had already broken up. The manager didn't understand why. If he was going to say that, he had rushed over to cook for her, since all his actions indicated otherwise. I can't tell if So Jung and Hyundo became similar from dating for so long, or if they dated for so long because they were similar. But in any case, the way their words and actions didn't match was definitely the same. So Jung woke up and came out of her room looking for Hyundo, but the manager told her he had already left, though not before cooking a ton of food for them. She was angry at herself for trusting the manager, who had let him go after he went to all that trouble. The manager told her what Hyundo had said when he suggested he stay for dinner. According to the manager, the guy cooked all that food out of pity for his ex-girlfriend who couldn't seem to get over the breakup. If that was the case, So Jung was ready to declare war on Hyundo. The manager knew she was hurt, but regardless of whether they got back together, she needed to finish her work like a professional. After thinking for a moment, So Jung told him to drive her to Hyundo's cafe right now, because when he's feeling down, he sometimes stays there and drinks himself into a stupor. And if she wasn't mistaken, today was one of those days. Yumin clocked out of work and said goodbye to her colleagues. She overheard the girls gossiping about what had happened at the cafe today. She called Hyundo, but he didn't pick up. Maybe she was overreacting. This wasn't like the last time he rushed off to see his ex, when they almost had a huge fight even with Yumin's intervention. It suddenly occurred to her that Hyundo might have gone back to the cafe, so she decided to check on her way home. When she arrived, she saw the lights were still on inside. She found this strange, as Taejun had said he would close up after the last customers left. Yumin peeked inside and found Hyundo passed out on a table, and her first thought was that he might have hit his head. She rushed in, shaking his shoulder to try and wake him up. When she made sure he was still breathing and just asleep, she felt a wave of relief. The guy had clearly drunk too much. There were about 3 empty wine bottles on the table. Yumin's legs gave out, and she sank to the floor. She had to call Taejun to get this guy home. There was no way she could leave him here alone. Just then, Hyundo's eyes shot open, and he silently stared at the girl sitting next to him. Yumin was scrolling through her phone, looking for Taejun's number, not even sure if she had it saved. Without any warning, Hyundo grabbed the brim of her cap and pulled it off her head. He tossed the cap aside, covered her eyes with one hand, and started caressing her face with the other. She was completely stunned, thinking, "What on earth are you doing?" But Hyundo ignored her and asked if her fever had gone down. Startled, she jerked away, annoyed that he had woken up without any warning. Yumin stood up, steadying herself on the table and cursing herself for coming here. Hyundo placed his hand on hers, held it tight, and admitted that he had missed her like crazy. Yumin stood up, about to get angry, but after realizing what he'd said, she asked why he suddenly felt like he missed her. Hyundo looked at her with a hazy gaze and said that was exactly why he didn't want to see her. It was only then that she realized he was clearly drunk and had mistaken her for his ex-girlfriend. Yumin pulled over a chair to sit down because something serious had clearly happened to this guy. It was clear now that Hyundo had been dumped just like her, and everything he'd said in that alley was bullshit. He wanted to hurt her with his words, just like she wanted to get revenge on Kim Yizian. Guessing this was why Hyundo had agreed to her stupid plan. After thinking it over, Yumin told him to stop if he wanted to keep things from getting any weirder. She admitted she hated listening to a drunk person's ramblings, and Hyundo apologized to her. Yumin was surprised at how compliant he was when drunk and told him to let go of her hand. She wanted to tell him who he was looking at, but Hyundo became stubborn again and refused to let go. She kept trying to explain to the man who he was holding on to and told him her name. Hearing the name, Hyundo said she was the weirdo who hit him in the back of the head with her wallet and tried to trick him with a fake date. At first, Yumin started to get angry because she had only proposed a deal to him, but then she remembered the wallet incident. Her expression suddenly changed, and she apologized, saying that was indeed her fault. Suddenly, Hyundo laughed and thanked Yumin for that throw. She didn't understand why he was thanking her, since the situation at the time was actually pretty bad. But some things are said for a single purpose, and in this case, Hyundo wanted to rub salt in the wound. He succeeded, but he also hurt himself in the process because So Young's pain became his pain too. Yumin's sudden appearance that day had actually cheered him up, but now Hyundo couldn't confide all his feelings to her, so he just praised her throw. He told Yumin she should play baseball and would definitely become a champion. Then his head slumped onto the table, and he passed out again. The girl looked at the sleeping Hyundo, pleased with his praise. Although, considering her recent behavior, she was the one who really should be apologizing to him. Yumin tried to pull her hand free again and wake Hyundo up, but he was completely out. The girl called Taejun, apologizing for bothering him so late and asking him to come to the cafe to take their friend home. After arranging things with him, Yumin decided to wait there for him to arrive. After all, one good turn deserves another. It wasn't long ago that Hyundo was the one listening to her drunken ramblings. Just then, So Young's car pulled up to the cafe and saw the scene inside. She saw that girl again, so she told her manager to drive her back. He turned the car around, feeling sorry for himself because he just couldn't quit this job. Waking up the next morning, Hyundo realized he was at home, but had no idea how he got there. The guy clearly remembered drinking red wine at the cafe and blaming himself for running to So Young the moment she called. But after that, Hyundo's memory was a complete blank. He nervously wondered if he had even locked the cafe door or if he had just left, leaving the place in a mess. He decided to check the security footage, so he grabbed his phone and pulled up the video from yesterday. Hyundo fast-forwarded to where his memory cut off and saw Yumin running around in the cafe. What he saw next shocked him so much that he spilled the water he was about to drink. Haekyung walked into the cafe where Yumin was already waiting for her. The girls were very happy to see each other, even though they had to meet at 10 in the morning due to Haekyung's packed schedule. Yumin was worried that her friend had lost weight, thinking she wasn't eating properly because of work. But she had actually gained a few pounds from late-night snacks, which was unexpected. She asked about Yumin's life, but even a simple question like that was hard for her to answer now. She started talking about selling bags online when her phone suddenly rang. Seeing it was Hyundo, Yumin hesitated to answer, but Haekyung told her to take the call while she looked at the menu. It occurred to her that if she answered now, she could casually reveal the fact that she was seeing someone. So she apologized, answered the phone, and asked if he remembered what happened last night. Hearing a man's voice, Haekyung sadly realized that Yumin probably had a boyfriend already. 8 years ago, she ran into the hospital, out of breath, where her brother met her. A 17-year-old Haekyung, with tears in her eyes, asked Kim Yizian how their dad was doing. The boy hugged his sister and told her not to worry, as they had found their dad in time and he was now in surgery. After calming down a bit, Haekyung noticed the girl standing behind Kim Yizian. This was the first time the boy introduced his sister to Choi Yumin, one of his dad's students who went to the same university as him. The girl's eyes were red, and Haekyung guessed she had clearly been crying too. Kim Yizian told his sister that it was Yumin who had saved their dad's life. Today, Taejun was wiping down tables, getting the cafe ready to open. He was telling Hyundo, who had just come in for his shift, how he had taken him home yesterday. He was just bragging about how great he was, and while his friend was very grateful, he'd be even happier if he could just shut up for a minute. When Hyundo asked how he knew about the situation, Taejun explained that Yumin had called him. He wasn't surprised the guy didn't remember anything, since he was already passed out when he arrived. So he told Yumin to go ahead, and then dragged his friend home. But something about the whole thing felt a little off to Taejun. Yumin said she saw Hyundo when she passed by the cafe on her way home from work, but he remembered her place being in the opposite direction. Still, he figured he might have remembered wrong and went to wipe the next table. Hyundo started to wonder if Yumin's sudden visit wasn't just a coincidence. Then what was it? He stepped outside and called the girl, and as soon as she answered, he apologized for last night. He was really sorry if he did anything to upset her, as he didn't mean to at all. Yumin held no grudge, since he was just drunk and she'd been there before. The only thing Hyundo didn't understand was why she called herself an understanding weirdo. Towards the end of the call, she asked him to call back later as it wasn't a good time to talk. Hyundo was annoyed with himself for not asking how Yumin got there yesterday and for not thanking her for her help. Haekyung admitted she had overheard their conversation and asked if Yumin had been drinking a lot last night. She wondered if she should casually bring up Hyundo. She mentioned that a guy she knew got blackout drunk last night and kept calling to apologize. Haekyung wondered if he had made a big scene. Yumin, recalling what really happened last night, casually said he was relatively well-behaved. Haekyung was disappointed because she had hoped they would become family, but her brother had ruined everything. She wanted to ask Yumin about the guy, but couldn't bring herself to do it. Yumin already regretted what she said, as she had completely forgotten about Haekyung's feelings. She looked so dejected, and this girl, despite everything that happened with Yizian, still invited her to lunch. Gosh, Yumin was being such a jerk to Haekyung. Or was she? The heroine thanked the girl for lunch, and she promised to invite her out more often in the future. Yumin offered to give her a ride, but she had already arranged for her manager to wait for her here. Haekyung wanted to introduce her friend to her boss, as building connections in this industry would be good for her career. Suddenly, the heroine apologized to the girl for the stress their breakup with Kim Yizian had caused her. It must have been awkward for Haekyung to be caught between her and her own brother, but she shouldn't feel bad about it. The girl smiled and thanked her friend for saying that. Haekyung really wished things could go back to the way they were. Just then, a car pulled up and the girl said it was a ride. Yumin promised to meet the manager next time and urged Haekyung to hurry, as they were already waiting. But when the car door opened, our heroine was stunned, not expecting So Jong to be in the car at all. It seems the manager decided to pick up the actress first, so she was now all smiles, telling the stylist to get in the car. So Jong saw Yumin and asked Haekyung to introduce her to her friend. The actress got out of the car to say a proper hello, for courtesy's sake and all that. Yumin couldn't believe that So Jong herself was standing right in front of her, smiling. She admitted she had seen all her movies and was a huge fan. So Jong was very flattered to hear that. She never thought Yumin would be a fan of hers. The girl even gushed about movies where the actress only had a minor role. In her opinion, So Jong completely outshone the main characters. The actress found Yumin's enthusiasm quite amusing. She was a little sad to have to say goodbye, so she asked the girl where she was headed. Hearing she was going to work, So Jong offered her a ride if it was on the way. Yumin immediately accepted, completely ignoring Haekyung's reminder that she had her own car. She admitted it would be an honor to ride in the same car as So Jong. Even though Yumin seemed to have lost her mind, Haekyung was just happy as long as her friend was happy. A few days later, she was standing in the middle of the bookstore where she had arranged to meet Hyundo. She had learned by now how to find him in a crowded place, just by looking in the most secluded corner. Sure enough, the guy was already there, flipping through a book by the back shelves. Yumin walked up to Hyundo and asked him how he got home that night. The man thanked her for her help and said that next time he gets drunk, she should just slap him. Passers-by who overheard this out of context turned their heads in surprise to look at the couple. Yumin didn't see why he had to take things to such an extreme, but for Hyundo, such behavior was genuinely unacceptable. He was even ready for a knock on the back of the head, which he thought would be more effective than a slap. Yumin suggested to Hyundo that they move aside, as his words sounded strange to those around them. Once in a less crowded spot, she assured him she didn't mind at all, since she knew he had just mistaken her for someone else that day. But Hyundo was stubborn about it, wanting her to hit him regardless of whether he had mistaken her or not. Yumin was driven crazy by his insistence on getting hit. Looking at his confused face, the girl figured he was just shocked that he had mistaken another girl for his ex. I mean, if the same thing had happened to her, she'd be freaking out right now, too. After a short silence, she agreed and promised to give him a good smack, just as he wished. Yumin was exhausted by this conversation and hoped she wouldn't actually have to get physical with Hyundo. Walking back into the bookstore, she noticed the other customers avoiding her gaze. Yumin couldn't understand why she always ended up in these ridiculous situations whenever she was with this man. They pretended to browse for books, searching the bookstore for her ex-boyfriend, but to no avail. Hyundo asked her to describe what he looked like, so he would know who to look out for. According to her, he was handsome, smart, polite, considerate, and tall, so he looked good in anything. Hyundo wasn't sure how that description was helpful for finding someone, and asked for some more specific details. Yumin, realizing how silly she sounded, hid her face behind a book. The man they were looking for was about the same height as Hyundo, had darker skin, always smiled, and dressed casually. The man scanned the crowd, and suddenly his gaze landed on someone. Without lowering her book, Yumin asked if he saw anyone matching the description. Hyundo moved the book away and told her to look where he was looking. Sure enough, there was a man standing by the shelves who looked a lot like Kim Yizian. Yumin hoped it wasn't him, then caught herself wondering why she would think that, since this was exactly why she was here. Suddenly, the man turned and looked straight at her. Making eye contact, she was so startled that she dropped her book. The stranger was finally meeting his friend, whose lateness had forced him to pick up a book for the first time. Yumin told Hyundo that they did look alike from the back, but other than that, they were completely different. The person they were looking for wasn't here, so she suggested they leave. Hyundo let out a heavy sigh, saying they weren't looking for a needle in a haystack, but for someone who was supposed to be nearby. The sun began to set, and our fake couple walked along their usual path. Yumin was exhausted from all the walking and just wanted to eat something and go home. The girl was starving, but she held off on eating because Hyundo had a question for her. The guy wanted to know how Yumin ended up at his cafe the other day, and if she was really just passing by on her way home. She admitted that she actually lived in the opposite direction, but she was worried when he suddenly ran off from work in the middle of the day. Hyundo didn't see why she should be worried, since they weren't a couple at all. Yumin reminded him of how he had stormed out of his own birthday party and fought with his ex the day they first met. She felt that Hyundo was no different from her. Really, so she told him not to get the wrong idea, but she had come to see him out of sense of camaraderie. You know, Hyundo had pretty much guessed that, but Yumin was still a very interesting person to him. Taking advantage of him calling himself curious, she asked if he had fought with his girlfriend again today. To be honest, Hyundo felt it would have been better if they had actually fought. He couldn't understand why she would text him about her feelings just to watch him come running back. It angered him that So Jung couldn't just give in for once and admit she missed him. Yumin hadn't missed how downcast Hyundo was after that meeting, just like this piece of burnt meat. The man snatched the burnt food from her hand, saying why bother asking when she already knew. Yumin demanded that he stop running to his ex-girlfriend whenever she called. He couldn't show her any weakness. Hyundo wondered if she would take her own advice if he gave it to her. After all, she hadn't had a chance to show any regret yet, since her ex-boyfriend hadn't even contacted her. Yumin tried to recall if she had said something like that, and asked Hyundo why he would think so. But the guy remembered perfectly that she had mentioned it while talking to Jae-hee when the four of them met. She recalled her friend saying at the time that she was still in touch with some of her exes. Suddenly, Yumin confessed that she was really scared at the bookstore today, worried that the man was one of them. She was afraid that if he saw her, he wouldn't feel a shred of regret and would just sincerely congratulate her on finding someone new. Yumin felt like a complete fool for having such thoughts. I mean, she was too old to be scared and nervous about something like this. The same feeling that drove Yumin to run to the cafe on her way home from work, Hyundo was feeling it now. He kind of wanted to turn away and pretend that person wasn't there. But he couldn't do that without feeling a terrible sense of awkwardness. Hyundo stared at her for a moment and then asked who else knew about this. In fact, not even Yumin's family and friends knew about this weakness of hers. The man realized that now only he knew about it, and only she knew about his. He told Yumin not to worry, now that they had both jumped into this crazy game. See, as long as they kept their mouths shut about the stupid things they were doing, no one would ever know. After talking with Hyundo, the girl felt much better, and they finished their dinner in a lighter mood. Kim Yizian was walking among the crowd on the street, passing by the cafe where Yumin was. He saw the girl, just as Hyundo was trying to convince her not to worry about her weakness. Yumin smiled, because it was true that only the two of them knew how ridiculous they were being. She suddenly remembered that Hyundo had recently told her they weren't close enough, yet here he was, worrying about her. But the man replied that he still stood by what he said, finding it amusing that this made Yumin so angry that she swore never to worry about him again. After dinner, the girl thought about how difficult it was to communicate with Hyundo. She didn't know how to get in sync with him, especially when he had been so down himself just a moment ago and was now comforting her. Suddenly, she was startled to see Kim Yizian in the crowd outside the window. He disappeared, so Yumin stood up to get a better look, thinking she must have been seeing things again. With his head down, Kim Yizian walked home among the stream of people moving through the city. Haekyung was already waiting for her brother, who was late for their dinner out. They set the table and ate in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Breaking the silence, Haekyung asked Yizian if there was a girl who liked him now. According to her brother, there was such a girl, but they weren't dating. Kim Yizian didn't want to, as he felt there was no need for a relationship. Haekyung, thinking her brother was still hung up on Yumin, hinted that she might have a boyfriend now. Kim Yizian confirmed his sister's suspicion, saying he saw them on his way home. In response to Haekyung's surprise question, he said he had only glimpsed them in the cafe and didn't even get a clear look at the man's face. Yumin was with another man, so Yijin couldn't just walk over and say hello. Haekyung disagreed with her brother's reasoning, calling him an idiot. Although Kim Yijin felt it was selfish of him to do so, he decided to find an opportunity to give it a try. I mean, maybe she wouldn't be angry at all, and you'll never know if you don't try, right? At this thought, Kim Yijin smiled, and then he and his sister continued their dinner in silence. Su Jong sat amidst a mountain of boxes, inspecting the bags. The finished products were much better than she had expected. She turned one of the bags around, and after confirming its excellent quality and cool design, she suddenly tossed it aside. A few days ago, Yumin had given Su Jong her business card after their meeting. When the actress asked where her showroom was, she said that all her designs were currently sold exclusively online. Su Jong wanted to see the bags, so Yumin offered to give her the website address for her online store. Sitting in the back seat, Haekyung watched happily as the famous actress suddenly took an interest in her friend. Su Jong not only asked the girl for the website address, but also for her phone number. Yumin gave the actress her number, thanked everyone, and then began to say her goodbyes as they had arrived at her workplace. As a final request, Su Jong asked the girl not to tell anyone about their meeting. She said some people could be a bit possessive about such things. Yumin assumed the celebrity was asking this because she didn't want any extra gossip, so she agreed and said goodbye. Now, all of this seemed so childish to Su Jong, but Hyundo's changed behavior was really annoying her. To get back at him for provoking her and Yumin, the girl posted a photo on social media holding a bag from her collection. The next morning, when Hyundo went out for a run, he saw his neighbor again, who had stopped on his way to work to pet a kitten. Kim Yijin handed him a business card, telling him to get in touch so he could cover all the expenses. Hyundo jogged along the riverbank, watching the sun rise above the horizon and marveling at how quickly time passed. Returning to his residence, he saw his neighbor squatting in the yard for some reason. Hyundo sensed something was wrong and rushed over, seeing the man holding an injured kitten. He wanted to take the kitten to the vet, but that would mean taking time off work. Hyundo offered to take the kitten himself, as it wouldn't matter if he was late for work. The neighbor handed over his business card, insisting that he get in touch because he wanted to cover all the vet bills. The man promised to keep him updated on the situation, but refused the money, saying he was helping voluntarily and the cost was not an issue. Since Kim Yijin didn't know the other's name yet, he introduced himself and told him not to worry about anything and to hurry to work. Realizing he was now completely late, the man thanked his new friend and asked him to call again. Hyundo balanced the kitten on his head, watching him leave, lost in thought. Ever since Su Jong posted the photo with Yumin's bag, her office had been in an uproar. Seriously, in just one day, all the stock in their online store had sold out. Yumin couldn't believe what was happening. Their phones were ringing off the hook. Countless companies paid a fortune for celebrity endorsements, and now she was seeing firsthand what kind of effect it could have. Yumin couldn't figure out why Su Jong would do this, especially since she hadn't paid her at all. She didn't think the actress posted the photo for her sake, as they barely knew each other. Maybe she just really liked the bags, but for some reason, Yumin felt uneasy about it all. Just then, the girl's phone rang. She answered and heard Su Jong's voice. The girl rushed out of the office, telling her colleague she needed to take a work call. Once outside, Yumin admitted she was glad to get her call, as she had a question she wanted to ask her. She wanted to know why a celebrity like her would decide to post a photo and tag her brand. Su Jong said she really liked the bag and that she often posted about things she bought, so Yumin shouldn't feel burdened in any way. The girl breathed a sigh of relief and thanked her, saying it was the first time she had ever seen her warehouse completely empty. The actress said she had to take a picture because the bag was so pretty, words that deeply touched Yumin's heart. Su Jong suggested they get lunch together sometime to get to know each other better, and she agreed, promising it would be her treat. After saying goodbye, the girl immediately called her mom to brag about the company's success. Hyundo looked sadly at the kitten he had brought to the vet clinic that morning. He decided to check on the stray cat after work, and just then, Kim Yijin walked in. Hyundo told his neighbor that the kitten was doing a little better, but the vet wanted to keep it overnight for observation. Kim Yijin was genuinely happy that the little one was doing better, but in his opinion, it was too early to celebrate. The kitten was fragile, so the risk of something going wrong was still high. Leaving the vet clinic, Kim Yijin noted that Hyundo must really like cats to come here after work. He didn't dislike cats, but he wasn't that fond of them either. However, he felt a sense of responsibility for a life in need. He thought his connection to the cat was a bit different from Hyundo's heartfelt concern, but the man was convinced that Yijin's willingness to step up and take responsibility was a rare thing these days. The new friend was happy to hear such words from such a kind person. Hyundo's phone rang, and after apologizing to Yijin, he stepped aside to take the call. Yumin said she couldn't go to that crappy little bar tonight. The one where they had planned to look for her ex Hyundo didn't care at all why she had changed her plans, but she blurted out that she had won the lottery. It turned out this guy was particularly interested in this kind of thing and was suddenly all ears, wanting to know the details. But Yumin called him out, saying he didn't care 2 seconds ago, and Hyundo got angry, threatening to hang up. The girl explained that winning the lottery was just a metaphor, meaning their company was suddenly flooded with bag orders. Hyundo started threatening to hang up again because Yumin was showing off, but then she dropped the bombshell that Su Jong had promoted their brand online. The guy was completely stunned, asking if she was talking about the actress Su Jong and if she had actually met her. Yumin had promised Su Jong she wouldn't tell anyone about their meeting. She just said no, which meant that Su Jong had found Yumin's account, ordered a bag, and then posted it on her own page, which was clearly aimed at him. He felt it was either a warning or a way of showing off, or both. But verbally, Hyundo just praised Yumin for her professional achievement. Kim Yijin was surprised to hear a familiar name, even though it was a very common one. He suggested they could share a ride if Hyundo was also heading home. The two walked outside, discussing what to do next with the kitten. They had rescued it a few days ago. Hyundo received a photo from a friend whose daughter was now inseparable from the kitten. Both men were thrilled because they had not only saved a small animal, but also made a little girl super happy. He thanked his friend for her help and asked her to keep the kitten for a while longer until they could find a permanent home for it. When a friend asked if he was okay or if he was still suffering from insomnia, he said everything was fine and that he would text her later. Suddenly, a girl behind them jumped up from her table and yelled at her date that she'd had enough and they were done. The reason for her outburst was that he kept eating her meal, the one she ordered every time. So this girl was railing against her boyfriend for being a total egomaniac, storming out of the coffee shop while yelling. Just then, Yumin walked in and they bumped into each other at the door. She said, "Whoa, sorry," and let the angry girl go first. The man chasing after her also ran straight into Yumin. After an exhausting day, she was completely drained and was apologizing to Hyundo for being late. She looked around and asked, "Why did you pick such a secluded table?" Before they could even order, Yumin suggested they move. They took a spot by the window. It was raining outside, and this way, her ex would see her if he walked by. Hyundo told her how the couple had fought over a plate of fried rice. Yumin was disappointed she had missed it, but Hyundo didn't find their stupid argument funny at all. Hearing that Hyundo had seen something similar before, she said, "Quick, tell me. Tell me everything." 3 months ago, this guy was online reading the latest gossip about Su Jong and Sunchan dating. The article claimed they had gone to a cafe together after meeting up with some mutual friends. Hyundo found it strange that the ever-cautious Su Jong would hang out with a man she was already rumored to be involved with. Suddenly, he overheard a girl at the next table telling her boyfriend she was breaking up with him. Right then and there, in that same cafe, Yumin was breaking up with Kim Yijin. He was stunned that she could say something like that with a smile. Yumin told Hyundo to forget it if he couldn't remember, saying she was just curious. But it all came flooding back to him, and now he was asking if she had broken up with her boyfriend. On Christmas Eve, no less. Seeing her surprised expression, he explained that he happened to be in the same cafe at the time. Hyundo remembered Yumin had a smile on her face when she told her boyfriend she'd had enough. He couldn't understand how someone could say something like that with a smile, but 3 months later, he did the exact same thing himself. Yumin was well aware of this, as she had witnessed that conversation, and she began to feel ashamed despite the apt comparison Hyundo had made. The guy wanted to know what the real reason was for her decision to break up. Yumin never thought he would ask, and it was something she definitely didn't want to talk about. Now, sober, she waved her hand and asked the waiter to bring her 3 bottles of soju right away. With tears in her eyes, she confessed that she had actually wanted to spend the rest of her life with her boyfriend. If he had cheated on her or done something particularly egregious, she wouldn't have been this heartbroken. She was so upset she didn't even notice her hair falling into her plate. Hyundo pointed it out, but she couldn't care less about such a small thing right now. She just wanted him to listen. Yumin told him she had been with that man for 6 whole years. The problem was he never really desired her, you know? He loved her, sure, but he wasn't head over heels for her. Yumin wailed, unable to understand it. She said that kind of love was for family and friends, but there should be more between lovers. Yumin was even ashamed to explain it when people asked why they broke up. Hyundo grabbed a few napkins and got up to sit next to the messy girl. When he asked if the man had told her this directly, Yumin explained that she had overheard him saying it on the phone. Furious that the idiot would say something like that out loud, Hyundo picked a few strands of hair out of her food. He wiped them clean while Yumin sobbed, telling him not to badmouth her ex because she could do it herself. Still, Hyundo thought that was the kind of thing you could only say after spending a lifetime together while standing in front of a grave. When she asked why he was suddenly being so nice to her, he said anyone would be after seeing her wash her hair with her dinner while crying. Hyundo promised not to tell anyone Yumin's secret, as it could hurt her pride. But she couldn't just take his word for it, so she demanded he share his story. She grabbed Hyundo's sleeve, begging him to tell her about his breakup. The guy was already regretting ever asking her about it. Now he owed her a story, too. 6 years ago, when Hyundo was 25, he was walking down the street. Su Jong was standing in an alley, and when she spotted him, she stopped him to ask for a light. Hyundo glanced at her, then silently turned and walked in the other direction. He went into the store next door, bought a lighter, and brought it to her. But instead of taking it, Su Jong held out a cigarette and asked him to teach her how to smoke. She had an audition coming up, but she couldn't play a chain smoker without ever having held a cigarette. Hyundo lit the cigarette, exhaled the smoke, said, "That's enough," and stubbed it out on the wall. But Su Jong stopped him because she hadn't learned how to smoke at all on her first try. Back then, Hyundo had just barely managed to quit smoking, but looking at her smile, he thought, what did it matter if all his efforts went up in smoke? Just this once. Hyundo asked to leave work early and promised to make up the time later. No problem. The boss was annoyed that he was going crazy over a girl he'd only known for a few weeks. Even though the guy was in a relationship himself, it didn't affect his work. Hyundo and Su Jong went to see an apartment to rent for her, and the real estate agent thought she was sick because she kept her mask on. Stepping out onto the terrace, Su Jong was stunned by the view, so they decided to take the place. She was worried the rent was too high, but Hyundo promised he would take care of everything. He wanted her to live here and be able to go to her auditions without any worries. Su Jong suggested they live together, as she felt uneasy letting him shoulder the whole burden. But since she was an actress, Hyundo thought it was better for them not to live together, just in case, and promised to visit her often. He was happy for a whole year after they started dating, feeling for the first time the joy of daily life with someone he loved. It was this willingness to give things up that made their relationship special. That's why he believed their relationship would remain strong even after Su Jong's debut. It was the second year of their relationship, and now the girl would only go out after completely covering her face to hide from prying eyes. She would pick the most secluded seats in cafes, and she felt that when they were together, people paid even more attention to them because of his height and intimidating appearance. One day, as they entered a bookstore, Su Jong, again hiding her face under the brim of her hat, heard the click of a camera. She flinched, afraid she had been photographed, but Hyundo tried to reassure her that wasn't the case. Even though it was just a guy taking a picture of his girlfriend, she was convinced someone was trying to secretly photograph her. Hyundo offered to go check if she was that concerned, but Su Jong just turned around and went home. Another time, They were hanging out in an alley, and Hyundo, extremely worried, wanted to open a bottle of water for her. Su Jong insisted she didn't need to go to the hospital. She was just exhausted. She was pale and always felt like countless eyes were watching her from every corner. She snatched the bottle from Hyundo's hand, threw it on the ground, and yelled at him to stop mentioning the doctor. Then she left. Pulling her mask back up, she told him not to even think about touching her in public. As a newcomer in the entertainment industry, she didn't want to get involved in a relationship. Scandal. Hyundo apologized for his carelessness, but Su Jong wished he would get angry with her, afraid that if he kept indulging her, things would only get worse. And things did get harder. As the actress suggested, they stopped meeting in public altogether. Hyundo found it increasingly difficult to understand Su Jong, and they saw each other less and less. It was their third year together, and he was looking at a space for a cafe that the previous owner had decided to move out of. As Hyundo was talking to the real estate agent, his phone rang. Su Jong told him she was looking at houses to move into because she needed better security. She also wanted him to move into the house next door, which her agent had found for him. Although Hyundo liked where he was living, Su Jong insisted the new place was perfect for them to meet and that they wouldn't draw attention there. In the fourth year of their relationship, rumors began to circulate that the actress was dating actor Song Chan. She claimed that the day the damaging photo was taken was the first time they had ever met. According to her, it was all a misunderstanding because the reporters had twisted everything. Hyundo didn't doubt her words, but a lingering anxiety kept him up at night. After that scandal, Su Jong's schedule was packed, and I started seeing her pictures everywhere. That same winter, a second wave of rumors hit, and Hyundo started to panic even more. He asked her point blank if she was going to tell him the inside story of these rumors. Su Jong swore she was just hanging out with friends, and they just happened to be caught on camera. But Hyundo knew she would never do anything that could ruin her career. Su Jong must have known that if she kept meeting with Song Chan, those articles would surface again. The actress claimed she didn't intentionally stir up those rumors, as that kind of gossip would only hurt her. However, Hyundo didn't see her being very worried about it, so he brushed her hand away from his face. After that scandal, Su Jong became a brand ambassador for a luxury brand and became even more famous. She hugged Hyundo repeatedly, saying it was just business and that everyone in the entertainment world used each other. She knew he was surprised and upset, but she wanted him to understand because she was sure that he loved her. But Hyundo needed to hear her say she loved him and to simply apologize. He hadn't even considered that Su Jong might not know this simple trick, or that even if she did, she couldn't be bothered to reassure him. It's strange, but even if you love someone, you might not be able to stand them. So Hyundo suggested they break up. After saying goodbye to Su Jong just like that, he never went back to the place she had found for him. Hyundo didn't know how to tell all this to Yumin without mentioning his ex's name. So he said he couldn't go into detail, but their relationship was so stressful that it was impossible to continue. From his tone, she could sense how difficult that period had been for Hyundo. Yumin was angry at herself for not stating things as calmly as he did, and for wailing like a child instead. Still, Hyundo had told her something, even if it was just the bare minimum, and she had never expected to get any response at all. Walking home with him in the rain, she thought they both had their own troubles. Yumin asked him how he planned to get back to his place. It was raining heavily, they couldn't get a taxi, the buses had stopped running, and it was too cold to walk. Before Hyundo could say he was planning to walk, a car sped by and splashed him with water from puddle. Yumin yelled at the driver and panicked at the sight of him being soaked. After confirming she wasn't wet, Hyundo suggested they just keep walking. Yumin told him to come over to her place to dry off, and he agreed. Once inside, she apologized for the mess and handed Hyundo a dry towel. She brought him a cup of hot tea so he could warm up before heading out. As Hyundo drank the tea, he thought he must be crazy and shouldn't have come in at all. She suddenly suggested he take off his clothes, and the guy was so surprised he almost choked on his tea. Yumin, realizing he had misunderstood, smiled innocently and explained that it would take too long for him to dry otherwise. She rushed off to get some clothes her ex-boyfriend had left behind. Surprised that the girl was finally making sense, Hyundo began to look around her apartment with interest. On the fridge was a picture of Yumin and her friend Ji Hee from their school days, along with a bunch of cat photos. Hyundo looked at pictures of the girl with various wild hairstyles from her childhood. She looked like a real troublemaker. Yumin suddenly appeared from behind him, scaring him out of his wits. She handed him the dry clothes and told him her mom was a hairdresser and had a salon nearby. Yumin led Hyundo to the bathroom and told him to let her know if the size wasn't right. As he went in to change, the guy tried to remember why on earth he had decided to grow his hair long in the first place. Yumin told Hyundo to keep the clothes, as she would only have to throw them away otherwise, knowing they were a gift she had bought for her ex. He agreed. Yumin also gave Hyundo a trench coat, but it was hers, so he would have to return it. She was worried he would catch a cold, so she insisted he wear it. Bundled up and carrying a bag with his wet clothes, Hyundo left Yumin's place. He found himself liking the scent on her trench coat and turned to look back at her window. Although it was a bit hot in those clothes, Hyundo didn't take off the trench coat until he got home. Today, he had really opened up to someone, even if it was just to talk a little about his relationship with Su Jong. Maybe for that reason, or perhaps because of the long walk, he finally got a good night's sleep tonight for the first time since the breakup. Hyundo and Taejian were working frantically, swamped with customers since the morning. My man noticed that the boss's complexion had changed, as if it had brightened and the bags under his eyes were gone. Hyundo didn't look as tired as usual. After handling all the orders, the guy checked to see if Yumin had messaged him, as she hadn't been in touch for a few days. Hyundo thought she might have given up since they hadn't managed to run into her ex yet. But even if that were the case, they had an agreement, and he wasn't going to let it go just because Yumin gave up. Just then, he received a message from Kim Yijin, suggesting they meet that evening. He wanted to treat him to a meal for saving the kitten. That evening, Hyundo arrived at the meeting spot. Looking around, the guy remembered coming here before with Yumin, so the street felt familiar. Hyundo wondered if her ex would show up here today, too. He tried to recall how she had described him that day. Next time, he would ask Yumin to show him a picture so he would know exactly what he looked like. Hyundo suddenly wondered why he was so invested in her business, especially when the girl wasn't even around. Kim Yijin also walked into the bar, and when he asked if the place was hard to find, the guy said he had been here before. They drank beer and discussed the kitten's future, as Hyundo hadn't been able to convince his friend to adopt it permanently. According to Yijin, he had already posted an adoption ad, but not many people were looking to adopt a pet. Hyundo remembered the cat photos on Yumin's fridge and decided to suggest she adopt the little animal. The guy picked up his phone, and just then, two girls approached their table, giggling. They proposed having a drink with the two men, since they had also come as a pair. After hearing them out, Hyundo flatly refused, explaining that they were there to discuss something. It wasn't until the girls walked away that the guy suddenly realized he had only thought of himself, and Kim Yijin might have felt differently. The thing was, he would have refused them anyway. Even though it had been a long time since his breakup, he still wasn't used to that kind of attention. When Kim Yijin asked Hyundo if he was seeing anyone, he said no. He paused, then told the guy that he had also broken up with someone. You know, sometimes it's easier to open up to a stranger. They bonded over their shared breakup experience and got along better the more they talked. It's hard to find someone like that these days, so it was no surprise they hit it off. By the end of the night, Kim Yijin mentioned that his ex-girlfriend had brought him to this cafe, which was why he came here often. When Hyundo asked if he came less often to avoid running into her, he said he would actually be happy to see her. The guy wondered if Yijin would be happy to see his ex with another man. To Hyundo's surprise, the guy said he would be totally fine with it, but more importantly, he would be glad to see her face after so long. Ever since things started with Su Jong, Hyundo had to hide himself away. It frustrated him to see her with another man in photos, and he would feel the same way if he saw her now. Yijin wouldn't mind getting back together if his ex wanted to, but he would be fine if she didn't. Hyundo wasn't sure if he could leave the decision entirely up to his ex and just go along with her wishes. He wondered why Yijin would put his own feelings second. The guy said she had dumped him because she felt drained after 6 years, and he wanted to know if she wanted to get back together. Hyundo told Yijin to just text her and find out, because if he had been in a relationship that long, there was no way he could just let go of his feelings. In fact, the guy felt he was in no position to give anyone advice. Hyundo turned to gaze at the empty spot in the bar where he and Yumin had sat, wondering why she hadn't replied yet. He muttered under his breath that she must be stuck at work. When Kim Yijin asked who he was talking about, Hyundo said he was referring to the person he had offered the kitten to. Seeing the concern on his face, His friend knew at once he was talking about a girl. Realizing his anxiety was showing, Hyundo started to get even more nervous, trying to stop his leg from shaking. He explained to Yijin that he had the wrong idea. According to Hyundo, he was just working with this girl on a short-term project. They didn't see each other as potential partners, and they were both thinking about other people anyway. Hyundo was sure they could only be friends, as she had left a bad first impression on him from the very beginning. Drinking was totally fine, but there was no need to make a scene, cry, and disturb other people. However, Hyundo thought she had a beautiful smile and a gentle personality, as she didn't yell even in situations where she could have gotten angry. He admitted that she might be much better than she seemed at first glance. Seeing Kim Yizian's strange look, Hyundo realized he had misspoken and added that being friends with her was actually great. In Kim Yizian's opinion, the guy was hilarious because he had no idea about his own feelings. He found it quite interesting to watch someone else's love story unfold. Just then, Hyundo received a text message and snatched his phone, but the sender wasn't Yumin, but Su Jong. She was hanging out with a friend at a cozy place she had wanted to come back to, but this time she had wanted to come with him. Putting down her phone, the actress suggested setting Yumin up with someone, since she hadn't dated since her breakup. She got off work early today, and to get everything done, she even had her colleagues clock out early too. After a business meeting, she headed to the factory to check on the bag production. After leaving the factory, Yumin went to the market and carried the heavy bags to her car by herself. Sitting in the car, she felt exhausted from the day and decided to rest for a bit before heading home. She suddenly had an idea to launch a clothing and footwear line, and if it went well, to hire more people and expand production. Yumin thought back to her blind date, wondering if she really needed any of this. I mean, it had been weeks, and she hadn't seen a trace of Kim Yizian. She decided to discuss it with Hyundo later, and was about to go home when Su Jong called. The actress suggested they meet up, and although Yumin was tired, she decided not to turn her down. When she arrived at the meeting spot, she found Su Jong already waiting for her. Our heroine was surprised to be asked out for drinks, but according to the actress, alcohol was the best way to get closer. She admitted that when arranging the meeting, she hadn't considered that it was a Friday and Yumin might have a date. Yumin smiled and told Su Jong she didn't have a boyfriend, and even if she did, she would rather be with her. Listening to Yumin talk about breaking up with her boyfriend last year, Su Jong sent that text message to Hyundo. The text came with a photo, and guess what? Yumin's phone was in the picture. Now, she asked her new friend with a big smile if she wanted to be set up on a date. Yumin thanked her for the kind offer, but had to refuse as she needed to focus on her work. Su Jong was a bit deflated after that, and our heroine felt she might have hurt the actress's pride. To soften the blow of the rejection, she said she was still hung up on her ex. Su Jong quickly apologized, saying she had no idea. She said she was in the same situation, so she completely understood how Yumin felt. Guessing she was talking about Sun-chan, our heroine asked if she also couldn't forget her ex. As if reading her mind, Su Jong revealed she had been with a non-celebrity, not the actor. Yumin was surprised by her honesty, since they had only met a few times. Su Jong smiled and asked her to keep it a secret, as she trusted her. Before her acting career took off, she was with a man who helped her get started, doing everything he could so she could focus on acting. In the beginning, he always trusted her, and even when Su Jong disappeared for hours or even days for work, he was always understanding. Thinking back on him, she remembered how he showed his love through his devotion and patience. Yumin pointed out that the story truly showed how much they cared for each other. Just then, Hyundo called, and she apologized, saying she had to step away to take the call. But Su Jong convinced Yumin to stay at the table and listen in on her conversation with her ex. When Hyundo asked what she was doing, Yumin didn't mention she was with Su Jong, only saying she was with a friend. When he asked if anything interesting had happened, she said no. Hyundo admitted he was worried because she had been quiet for a long time. He told her not to stay out too late and to be careful on her way home. After hanging up, Yumin found his behavior strange. Hyundo wasn't the type to call about something like that. After apologizing, the girl asked Su Jong where they had left off. Suddenly, the actress covered her face with her hands, saying she thought her ex had someone else now. She asked Yumin what to do, and Yumin, initially caught off guard by her crying, calmed down and told Su Jong to find a way to see him again. Regretting something you did is better than regretting doing nothing at all. The girl smiled and promised she would definitely take her advice. When Su Jong got home that night, she noticed a pair of men's shoes in the hallway. She walked into the living room and found Hyundo sitting on the sofa. Without even a greeting, he immediately confronted her, suspecting that she had met Yumin before and that they had been seeing each other. Su Jong noted that the girl was tight-lipped, keeping her promise not to tell anyone about this. Hyundo approached her and demanded that she not drag other people into their mess, as it was just between them. But Su Jong was convinced he had created that account for this very purpose and didn't understand what kind of reaction he was expecting. Then she asked him if he wanted her to beg him to come back. Su Jong grabbed Hyundo's hand and pressed his palm against her cheek. She told him she loved him and begged him to come back to her, promising to do whatever he wanted because she was the one who was wrong. If Hyundo's love was about loyalty, then for Su Jong, love meant possession and control. Feeling his anxiety over the years only made her more certain that it was love, and their breakup caught her completely off guard. Hyundo said nothing, simply cupping her face gently with both hands. It was as if he was trying to find the parts of her he once liked. Su Jong stared at the man, completely at a loss, trying to figure out what he was thinking. Hyundo turned towards the door and, on his way out, told her not to bother Yumin. He slammed the door behind him, leaving Su Jong standing there, fists clenched, seething with anger. Yumin was disappointed that their meeting was shorter than expected and hoped they would have another chance to get together. After they finished talking, the actress suddenly stood up, saying she didn't feel well. Yumin was annoyed with herself for not even taking a photo together as a memento. Remembering she hadn't replied to Hyundo's text, she decided to call him. When he picked up, she told him she couldn't adopt the kitten because she lived alone and didn't want to leave it by itself while she was at work. Hyundo told her how he and his roommate had found the pitiful-looking kitten on the street and rescued it. When Yumin asked what he was doing, he said he was just taking a walk in the park, as he couldn't seem to sleep. She was worried something had happened to him, especially since he had called her so suddenly today. He cut her off, saying he was fine, and tried to hang up, but Yumin begged him to tell her which park he was in. Just a few minutes later, she was walking in the park she and Yizian used to frequent. Seeing that she had even brought hot tea, Hyundo was surprised she had arrived so quickly. He didn't understand why she had come, but Yumin told him to sit down first. After Hyundo sat, she admitted she couldn't just stand by and watch a friend be upset. If they got to know each other better, they could be friends, and he didn't even argue with that. Yumin could see he was upset and guessed something bad must have happened, since he couldn't sleep and was out wandering. She asked Hyundo if he had met his ex again, and he was so shocked he nearly choked. Looking at him, Yumin knew instantly that was it, as it was written all over his face. When she asked if he wanted to cut his hair, Hyundo said absolutely not. He didn't want to scare people by looking too intimidating. But Yumin said, "Dude, you have great features. No one would be scared. You have to show them off." I mean, Hyundo always has his hair slicked back at work, showing his forehead, right? She had seen the comments on his cafe's page, and everyone was talking about how handsome the owner was. Hyundo said she was naive to believe everything people said. Yumin told him to learn to accept a compliment, because being too humble wasn't very attractive. She fell silent, wondering if she was pushing too hard. Hyundo stood up and took Yumin's cup to throw it away. He glanced at her and admitted that she had made him feel much better. Looking at Hyundo, Yumin wondered why he was so blind to his own good looks. Maybe it was baggage from a past toxic relationship, but she tried not to jump to conclusions about it. After their walk, they headed to the bus stop, as it wasn't easy to get a taxi on a Friday night. Yumin hadn't been to this neighborhood in a long time. That alley was where Yizian lived. She used to come here often. She asked Hyundo if he lived around here. When she found out he lived in the same alley as Kim Yizian, she froze in shock. She suddenly demanded that Hyundo take her to his place, letting the bus that had just arrived pass them by. Yumin scrambled for an excuse, blurting out the first thing that came to mind. She wanted to see how many stray cats were in the area. Walking down the familiar alley, she found herself standing in front of an equally familiar house. Hyundo was at work chopping vegetables, thinking about yesterday. As soon as they got to his place, Yumin had suddenly gotten flustered and was in a hurry to go back. She refused his offer to take her home, telling Hyundo to get some rest as she left. The guy was wondering if she really just wanted to know where he lived out of pure curiosity. Maybe she just wanted to see him home. That was totally something Yumin would do. She showed up at his place in the middle of the night because he seemed down, and then she played a trick to see him home. At that thought, Hyundo smiled at how she went to such lengths. Since the cafe was closed on Sundays, Taehyun asked his friend if he was free tomorrow. The guy didn't have any plans yet, though Yumin might text him. Taehyun invited Hyundo to go on a road trip with him in his car. He had already arranged it with Ji-hyun and Yumin, and as soon as the guy heard that name, he immediately agreed. The weather on Sunday was perfect, and everyone was already getting out of the car to grab their things and look around. Hyundo went to the trunk and saw Yumin struggling to get a large box out. He silently took the box himself, not letting her carry something so heavy. Yumin suggested that he at least let her help unpack. She crouched down next to him and asked in a low voice just how long it had been since he'd truly relaxed. Because of her, Hyundo was always busy, and he could have been with someone else or relaxing on his own instead of being with her. She apologized to him, and he just gave her a look. Hyundo told her there was no need to apologize because he was happy to be with her, which made Yumin happy to hear. She suddenly muttered that they wouldn't have to go out so often from now on. He didn't catch what she said and asked her to repeat it, but Ji-hyun and Taehyun interrupted, calling them out. Yumin and Hyundo left the tent without finishing their conversation, and even though she needed to tell him everything, the words just wouldn't come out. The four of them went for a walk by the stream, talking about how great it would be in the summer. Taehyun suggested they take a group photo, but Hyundo turned away. Yumin walked up and asked him to take just one picture. Hyundo agreed, but in the photo, he stood alone, unsmiling, gazing thoughtfully at her. Taehyun suggested the girls rest at the campsite while he and his friend went to prepare dinner. Lying on the bed, Ji-hyun told her friend about her relationship with the guy. She thought he was a great person, and the age gap wasn't a problem as long as they were just dating. After all, Taehyun was only 24, and it was too early for him to get married. Yumin asked her friend not to hurt the guy, but she insisted she was giving her all in the relationship. All right, everyone, let's eat. Hey, Hyundo, stop staring into the fire and come join us. There's plenty of food. The water for the ramen was boiling, and Yumin jumped up to make it, but the guy said no, I'll get it. Taehyun told her not to worry, saying Hyundo liked to do things his own way. They started talking about maybe going to see the cherry blossoms together. Taehyun said Hyundo probably hadn't seen them in a long time, and it might add a little spice to his life. Yumin chimed in that he probably went with his girlfriend. But Taehyun had never heard of this block of what being in a relationship. Just as Yumin was about to argue, Hyundo brought the ramen to the table, cutting her off. After dinner, everyone was relaxing at the campsite, ready to open some wine, but Hyundo wasn't drinking as he had to drive. Ji-hyun, a little tipsy, asked Taehyun to take her outside for some fresh air. As soon as they left, Yumin asked Hyundo what that was all about. She couldn't understand how he could hide a 4-year relationship from his best friend. Hyundo reminded her that no one knew except for one person, and he had his reasons. The guy recalled how he and Su Jong always try to find secluded places to avoid being seen. Yumin had a bad feeling that the 4-year relationship was slowly eating away at Hyundo from the inside. If she was right, he'd be better off staying away from his ex. But if he confessed, she would have to give up her plan too. After discovering they lived in the same building, Yumin had wanted to ask Hyundo for a favor, but now she didn't want to bother him anymore. Noticing her distress, the guy got up from the ground, sat next to her, and asked if she was okay. Yumin complained about a strange feeling in her stomach, and Hyundo offered to rub her back. Looking at him, the heroine decided to adjust her plan, confident that Hyundo would understand, since they were both using each other. From then on, Yumin always scheduled their dates near his place. They would have coffee, go shopping, and take tons of pictures. Hyundo was confused by her insistence on always seeing him home while refusing his offers to take her home. After another fake date, he took a shower and collapsed on the sofa. Picking up his phone, he started scrolling through Yumin's photos. Hyundo didn't understand why he was still taking pictures, since he wasn't posting them online anymore. He saw a picture of Yumin with cream all over her face and couldn't help but smile. He decided to send her the photo, thinking she would find it funny. Just then, Yumin called him, and Hyundo worried something was wrong since it was so late. A minute later, he went downstairs to find a smiling girl holding a package. A very drunk Yumin had taken a taxi over just to give Hyundo a dessert from her favorite cafe. She wanted to say sorry and thank you, hoping the dessert would send him off to a happy dream so he wouldn't have to wander around at night. Realizing the time, Yumin told Hyundo to just have a bite since it was so late. After hearing the surprised man thank her, she turned to leave, but he stopped her, inviting Yumin to come to his cafe anytime and promising to make her whatever she wanted. She said goodbye, hopped in a taxi, and left, leaving the man standing in the middle of the street with the bag, looking dazed. Just then, Yizian showed up, dragging his own drunk friend. The guy was super excited to be back in Korea, after so many years and had probably had a bit too much to drink. Hyundo offered Yizian a hand, helping him steady the man who was reaching for his bag of sweets. Kim Yizian apologized for his friend, then noticed the bag from Yumin's favorite cafe in his neighbor's hand. He said goodbye to Hyundo so he could get his drunk friend home to bed. A few days later, at work, Hyundo jumped every time he heard the door open. He had been hoping all day that Yumin would show up at the cafe, but she never did, not even by closing time. Hyundo still hoped she was just busy and would come later, as she hadn't called or texted in a while. Deciding to close up by himself tonight, he sent Taehyun home and glanced at the package that had been sitting on his desk. Yumin was still stuck at work. Even though it was late, her mom called, scolding her for not visiting home more often. Her mom didn't buy the too busy with work excuse, as she had seen Yumin hanging out with friends. The woman told her daughter she should at least get a boyfriend, but not someone like Yizian. Yumin was angry that her mom was bad-mouthing him. They did break up, but Yizian didn't deserve to be talked about like that. Her mom said she had treated his family like her own, and then they broke up, which she was not happy about. Yumin was tired of these conversations, so she told her mom to stop. Hanging up, she slammed her head on the desk. She was so stressed, she wanted something sweet. Suddenly, Hyundo called, and she answered, worried something was wrong for him to be calling so late. He reminded her that she had promised to come to his cafe, and Yumin admitted she had planned to go today, but was too busy with work. She hadn't had a free moment and was still stuck at the office. In that case, Hyundo offered to deliver dinner directly to her company. A short while later, there was a knock on the office door. Opening the door, Yumin commented on what an honored guest had come to her humble abode. Hyundo smiled and handed her a box of hastily made sandwiches. Seeing how Yumin wolfed them down, he wished he had brought more. To be honest, he had been waiting at the cafe for her to show up, so he had prepared something special. With that, he handed Yumin a bag of desserts, homemade with love. She was stunned that he could even cook, let alone bake desserts. Hyundo said he had started learning a few days ago because he found out Yumin really likes sweets. She couldn't believe he had learned just to make them for her. Yumin thought that if anyone else had done this, she would have gotten the wrong idea, but Hyundo was a chef, and it was in his nature to treat people. She wondered aloud how spoiled his girlfriend must be if he cooked this well for a friend. Hyundo leaned back in his chair and muttered that he didn't know, maybe not. Yumin said if she were his girlfriend, she would beg him to cook every day. But Hyundo didn't think it was something that should be asked for. When you love someone, you want to take care of them, clean for them, and cook for them. He would take care of all his girlfriend's daily chores, so that all her love and time would be just for him. He looked up at Yumin and asked if that was weird. When Hyundo was 16, his dad told him that even though he and his mom were separated, he would still love him. Since his son was starting high school, his dad suggested he live alone and promised to send money for everything he needed. He left, leaving the kid standing alone in the middle of the room, convinced that people who love you don't just abandon you like that. That was the memory that came to Hyundo's mind when he asked the girl if it was weird. Yumin thought he sounded like a house husband, completely devoted to his family and kids. She said everyone loves differently, and that was his way of showing love, which wasn't weird at all. But Yumin worried that if his girlfriend got used to that kindness, she might start taking it for granted, and he might get exhausted from being treated that way. Hyundo thought she was really perceptive, but she told him not to mind her. It was just her opinion. He said he had been thinking the same thing lately. What happened between them might have been his fault, and if he had shown his love differently, things might have turned out differently when they first met. So, Jong wasn't like she was now. She had changed a lot over the years they were together. Suddenly, Yumin jumped up, grabbed Hyundo's shoulders, and told him to snap out of it, because that's not how it was. Instead of defending himself, the guy was taking all the blame. She demanded he repeat after her. He was not at fault. He did everything right, and their relationship fell apart because of her. After locking up the office, Yumin agreed to let him drive her home. Walking to the car, she told Hyundo to remember their conversation if he ever had those thoughts again. She said a relationship is a two-person thing, so one person can't take all the blame for a breakup. Hyundo felt that contradicted what Yumin had said, since she had only blamed one side, but she argued that he had blamed himself enough, and she wanted to even things out. The blame had to be shared, or everything would go wrong. Even though she behaved the same way, she did it because she couldn't let go of the people she cared about. When Hyundo asked if he was close to her, she smiled and said yes, just as she was to him, since he even made her dessert. The guy had never had a close female friend before. He went to an all-boys school, and he was always more used to hanging out with guys. After getting into a relationship, he never felt the need to get close to other girls, so he naturally didn't form other connections. Maybe because she was his first ever female friend, Hyundo acted differently around her than he did with others. And he knew it himself. Looking at her now, he felt it all made sense. She was in a similar situation and was very understanding. They recalled Taehyun talking about the cherry blossoms blooming soon and his suggestion that the four of them go see them together. Suddenly, Yumin suggested that she and Hyundo go see the cherry blossoms alone, since they were supposed to be on a date. The man looked at her in surprise, and she corrected herself, stressing that it wasn't a real date. She suggested Hyundo go to the park near his house to see the cherry blossoms, as there were a lot of them there. In fact, she used to go to that park with Kim Yizian every spring. A few years ago, she was lying on a bench, completely mesmerized by the petals falling from the sky. Yizian came over to check if she was okay, and that's how they met. Kim Yizian had already left for work while his friend was just waking up, feeling awful after drinking so much last night. He looked around and noticed the photo with Yumin was still on the shelf. He said she always seemed like the type who would eventually come crawling back after a breakup. Some people are just super clingy. You can totally tell, right? Yumin was like that. You could see how dependent she was on Yizian. The dude was wondering why on earth she'd dump his friend. If that were the case, Yizian admitted he would have texted her. He couldn't just let it go. She was like family to him. He was frustrated, thinking that if they had gotten married, they would have actually been family. Taehyun asked Hyundo, "Do you know about that building under construction?" The customers were just saying that a big-name chef is building a new restaurant there. The guy was worried about how it would affect their cafe. The door opened, and as Taehyun went to greet the new customer, Hyundo suddenly heard him stuttering, unable to speak. The guy looked up to see what had scared his friend so much, and that's when he saw Seo Jun. Aaron had arrived at the production company for a meeting. The manager told her to wait in the lobby while he went to review the documents. Walking into the room, Aaron was surprised to see Su Jong sitting there and greeted the famous actress. After introducing herself, she got a bit flustered and showered her with compliments, saying she had seen all her work. The actress, without looking up from her phone, thanked the girl, who then remembered they had met at an awards ceremony. Su Jong was only half listening as she was busy scrolling through Hyundo's social media page. Aaron wanted to say more, but Su Jong's silence made her feel like she was being too forward, so she shut her mouth. Suddenly, the famous actress Sunbae Dae walked into the room, happy to see them both. Spotting an old friend, Su Jong jumped up and they started chatting. She said she was super bored waiting for her manager and was glad Aaron showed up. Sunbae Dae was happy the girls were already hitting it off and asked Su Jong to look after Aaron, just as she had once looked after her. Now that everyone was here, the woman suggested they all go somewhere together. Su Jong said there was a place she had been wanting to check out. And so, the three girls, two famous stars and one rising one, walked into Hyundo's cafe, immediately drawing attention. Taehyun was thrilled and rushed into the kitchen to tell his boss they had celebrities in the house. Hyundo told the kid to get back to cooking and decided to serve the table himself. He grabbed some water, walked up to Su Jong, and placed a bottle on her table. The Sunbae asked her to recommend something from the menu, but she admitted she was new here too. She turned to the chef, smiled, and asked him to recommend something for them. Hyundo was at his computer, working on the menu, when Su Jong came to see him earlier than usual. She was happy he had moved into the house next door, so they could see each other more often. Hyundo hands the menu to Su Jong, but she dismisses it, saying everything is delicious anyway. She goes into another room and starts telling them about what happened on set today. Hyundo suggests making 4 different dishes for the ladies. As he returns to the kitchen, Su Jong watches him go with a thoughtful expression. Her friends ask how she knew about this place, and she says a friend told her about it a while ago, but it took her a long time to finally come. Back in the kitchen, Tae-gang is still complaining about how unfair it is that he didn't get to serve the stars table. He apologizes for stealing his friend's chance to see a celebrity up close. Hyundo never thought something like this would happen after their breakup. After lunch, the girls enthusiastically thanked Taehyun, who volunteered to pay for the delicious meal. As they're paying, Su Jong walks over to the kitchen and looks at Hyundo. The girl tells him the food was delicious and that she'll definitely be back. Hyundo, clutching a rag he was using to wipe a table, tells her not to come back because he won't be waiting for her anymore. The manager and Hae-gyong are also having lunch, and now after picking up Su Jong, they head to work together. Hae-gyong saw that the actress posted a photo of a wallet from Yumin's brand on social media, and now they're talking about it. Su Jong admits she's been chatting with her recently, wanting to become friends. As she says this, the actress checks Yumin's social media page. Hae-gyong is tempted to meet up with the two of them next time, as Su Jong suggested, but despite her interest, she suddenly dismisses the idea. Su Jong is surprised, since her stylist and the girl are on good terms. Hae-gyong explains that their relationship is a bit complicated now, because Yumin is her older brother's ex-girlfriend. Hearing this, Su Jong asks if she can elaborate, if she doesn't mind. Yumin returns to the office with coffee, and everyone thanks her for her thoughtfulness. Jae-hee tells her to check her phone, which she'd left at the office and had been vibrating like crazy. Thinking it's a client or Hyundo, she picks up the phone and freezes. She sits there with her coffee, completely stunned. Yumin tries to stop her hands from shaking and calm her nerves. She tells herself that running into an ex is no big deal and that other people wouldn't make a fuss like she is. Looking back, whether it was before or after they were together, she never knew what to do. Kim Yizian walks up to her table and greets her with a smile. 13 years ago, the first time she saw that smile, she couldn't think about anything else. The students were gathered around the professor's son, completely captivated by his handsome looks. Kim Hyunwoo was a bit surprised by his son's sudden popularity among the other students. Yumin watched it all unfold from behind her classmates. After mustering up her courage, she asked the teacher for his son's name. 5 years passed after that day, and one evening, an exhausted Yumin was walking home through the park after work. She studied in the morning and worked at night, so she decided to sit on a bench for a short rest. Noticing the beautiful sight of cherry blossom petals falling, she lay down on the bench to enjoy it. Just then, Kim Yizian approached the girl and asked if she was okay. Startled to see him there, Yumin jumped up, called out his name, and started apologizing. Yizian thought she was sick, but the girl, now standing, explained she was just so tired she lay down to rest. She told him not to worry, and he asked how she knew his name. They sat down side by side on the bench and started talking about how Yizian's dad taught Yumin in high school. She laughingly told him how he caused a huge stir in the entire school once when he came by on an errand. Yumin had remembered his face and name ever since then, and now, who would have thought they were at the same university? The girl looked at him, wishing she had recognized him sooner. Kim Yizian suggested they exchange phone numbers. And just like that, amidst the falling cherry blossoms, she had another chance encounter with her first love, and it all made her feel like something incredibly romantic was about to happen. Yumin was completely smitten. As their friendship deepened, so did her feelings for Yizian. One day, passing by the university, she ran into him hanging out with his friends. His friends immediately started grilling Yizian, asking who she was, and he said she was one of his dad's students. He left his friends and offered to buy Yumin a cup of coffee. Despite his friends' annoyance, Yizian ditched them to hang out with the girl that day. The fact that she was his dad's student made their relationship a bit strange. Yizian always took good care of her, telling her not to study all the time and to relax more. Yumin told him he really didn't have to come to the project presentation. Yizian didn't understand why she'd say that, as he enjoyed everything she presented. Sensing her insecurity, he offered her simple words of support. Meeting again after class, Yizian apologized to Yumin for being late. Some underclassmen had held him up, and he admitted to her that his popularity could be annoying sometimes. Yumin blushed, then suggested with a hint of hope that maybe things would be simpler if he had a girlfriend. Yizian agreed, but he felt he couldn't just date anyone. He chuckled, saying that would only make things messy. Those quiet, intimate conversations, those moments that warmed her heart, slowly built up, and Yumin's love grew stronger. Of course, her one-sided love soon crashed into reality. It wasn't just her, there were many of his father's other students. Yizian was always surrounded by people, and he interacted gently and kindly with everyone around him. It was just his way. The truth was, Yizian's gaze was friendly but distant. He tried to get close to Yumin, but didn't want to cross any lines. She wasn't special to him, but he was special to her, so she painted everything that happened with a romantic brush. He was somewhat aware of this, while she interpreted everything the way she wanted to, because that's how a one-sided crush works. Despite knowing there were many others like her, Yumin still held onto hope. After listening to her friend's woes again, Jae urged her to confess to Yizian, saying she'd get rejected anyway. So what difference did it make when she said it? While on the phone, Yumin headed to school to see the teacher who had asked for her. Arriving at the right office, she knocked on the door, but Kim Hyun-woo didn't answer. Noticing the door was unlocked, Yumin opened it to find the teacher lying on the floor. The past flashed before her eyes, just like when they had tried to save her dad. With tears in her eyes, she rushed over to help the teacher. The ambulance took Kim Hyun-woo to the hospital, and Yumin sat there with her head down. Kim Yizian came over and hugged the girl, who was sobbing uncontrollably. A few days later, Yumin met him in the park and asked about the teacher. He hadn't woken up yet, but at least he was breathing on his own. She blamed herself for chatting with her friend, thinking that if she had gotten to the teacher sooner, this might not have happened. Yizian held Yumin and told her not to think that way, because she had saved his father's life. After a while, Kim Hyun-woo woke up, and although the brain damage wasn't too severe, he had to stay in the hospital for some time. Yumin helped take care of him, even though both Yizian and his dad tried to talk her out of it. She had decided to take a semester off in her senior year anyway, so she had the time. Yumin's mom thought she was being foolish, but the girl knew how selfish she was actually being. Behind her desire to help her mentor was a darker impulse, to use it as a way to get closer to Yizian. It was then that Yumin realized her love was actually calculated and twisted. Yizian also took time off from school to care for his father and took on the role of the head of the household. When he couldn't come to the hospital because of work, Yumin took care of the teacher. She also helped Hae-gyong, who was studying for exams at the time. Watching them, Yizian thought Yumin looked completely terrified, and he didn't dare to do anything. A year flew by, and the day of discharge arrived. Our girl showed up with a bouquet of flowers. Yumin suggested taking a family photo to commemorate the moment, but Hae-gyong and Kim Hyun-woo insisted that she join the photo too. Yizian took Yumin's phone and asked a nurse to help take the picture. The nurse admired their family-like atmosphere and happily took the photo. And so, they had this picture, in which a flustered Yumin glanced at Yizian's hand resting on her shoulder. Back at university, Yumin and Kim Yizian returned to their usual lives. They still ran into each other from time to time, having lunch, coffee, and hanging out together. Yumin was afraid of sitting alone on their usual bench after graduation. She worried that once they started working, they would have fewer and fewer chances to meet. Just as she was lost in thought, the man found her. Yizian asked the girl what was making her so gloomy, and she told him that the thought of life after graduation was hard to bear. Yumin felt that only darkness awaited her after college. Yizian had planned to talk to her about this after graduation, but decided to lay his cards on the table now. He turned to Yumin and asked if she would be his girlfriend. She froze in shock for a second, then put her coffee cup on the bench and jumped into Yizian's arms. She listened to his heartbeat, which seemed far too steady for such a momentous occasion. Yumin knew he hadn't confessed because he was head over heels for her, but she didn't care. She knew their feelings weren't equal, but he didn't know how bad that made her feel. His love wasn't fiery, but it was steady and calm, and this consistency gave Yumin confidence. Just as she had dreamed, Yizian said he liked her, and later, even that he loved her. Although the man didn't seem like a gentle person, Yumin trusted him. He wasn't the type to make empty promises. And now, she sat across from Yizian, wondering why he had suggested this meeting. She desperately wanted to know what he wanted to say, to know if he regretted losing her. But Yizian just sat there in silence, which was starting to really annoy her. The guy finally spoke, asking how Yumin had been and if she was surprised by his invitation. The truth was, Yizian believed it was best to cut all ties after a breakup. He thought contacting her after she dumped him would be disrespectful to her decision. Yizian admitted he'd stuck to that idea until he saw Yumin on the street one day and was genuinely happy for her. He told her he saw her with someone through a restaurant window. Yumin started racking her brain, trying to figure out who Yizian could have seen her with. Realizing that her silly plan had actually worked, the girl suddenly felt completely overwhelmed. She imagined Hyundo's jaw dropping when she told him everything. It seems all their efforts weren't in vain. Huh? Kim Yizian fidgeted with his fingers, finally mustering the courage to tell Yumin why he had called her here. He asked if she would be willing to go back to being friends, just like before. Hyundo sat in a cafe, constantly checking if Yumin had replied to his text. He was worried she would run herself into the ground from working too hard. Just then, his friend, the one he was supposed to meet, walked up to the table. They decided to have a few drinks, and his friend commented that Hyundo was looking sharp, dressed like he was going on a date, not hanging out with the guys, my friend. He thought Hyundo would be a wreck after the breakup, and he even thought they might have gotten back together with Su Jong. Hyundo denied it, though he had seen her a few times, and she'd even come to his cafe. He himself didn't understand what he saw in Su Jong to have dated her for so many years. He probably liked her tsundere attitude, her drive to chase her dreams, and despite their different views on relationships, he felt her love. But now Hyundo was completely lost, even though he had feelings until recently. His friend thought it was for the best if they broke up, and that there was no need to try and rekindle things. He never liked the girl from the first time Hyundo brought her around. Even before Su Jong became famous, the guy went out of his way for her, found a place to settle down, and she treated him like dirt. Hyundo himself didn't even think it was a problem that Su Jong asked him to pretend to be her manager on their dates. But what annoyed his friend was that she was like this even before her debut, when no one recognized her on the street. It angered him that Hyundo never went on a trip with his girl, and they didn't even have a single photo together. The guy couldn't understand why he was so angry about things that never bothered him in the relationship. Hyundo suddenly realized it must have been hard for his friend to watch him with Su Jong, because now he had a friend in a similar situation. The guy stared at him and asked if this friend of Hyundo's was a man or a woman. Seeing him avoid the question, he guessed it was a girl. Hyundo didn't understand why his friend was so surprised about his friendship with a girl, but the guy couldn't remember him ever talking about anyone other than Su Jong. He wanted to know everything about her and started grilling him with questions. According to Hyundo, the girl works very hard, gets along with everyone, and is honest about her feelings. My friend looked the guy over and smirked. He bet that Hyundo had feelings for this girl and that he would never smile like that if they were just friends. Even though the guy said they were just friends, he warned him not to get too invested in this relationship. But Hyundo was sure his friend was talking nonsense because he didn't know her. She was more hung up on the past than he was, so he probably wasn't even on her radar. Back home, Hyundo jumped in the shower, and when he got out, he had a text from Yumin. She asked to meet him tomorrow night to see the cherry blossoms and ride bikes because she had something to tell him. Hyundo couldn't ride a bike, but Yumin promised to teach him. His friend's words replayed in his mind, saying Hyundo smiled like a fool when he talked about her. The next evening, Yumin arrived at the park, which was packed with couples. The cherry blossom craze was getting on her nerves, but then Hyundo arrived for their meeting, making her forget her annoyance. They both remarked that they hadn't expected the park to be so crowded. Yumin smiled and suggested they ride bikes later and should just walk around and talk for now. She told him that her ex-boyfriend texted her yesterday. Hyundo tensed up at this and just listened quietly to Yumin's story. Apparently, he saw them together, and even though he said he wasn't jealous, things were going just as they wanted. After a moment, Hyundo asked if Yumin was considering getting back together with him. She said he suggested they just be friends. Hyundo was surprised, as he didn't think Yumin was the type to be buddy-buddy with an ex. He walked up to her and asked if she was really going to be friends with him. Last night, when he suggested being friends, Yumin was completely thrown. She hadn't expected that at all. She knew Kim Yizian was a good person, but also a decisive one. He wouldn't contact an ex for no reason, so she was a bit caught off guard. It seemed Yumin didn't know him as well as she thought, but strangely, she didn't feel bad about it at all. It wasn't what she expected to hear, but for some reason, she wasn't sad or angry. Come to think of it, being friends wasn't a bad idea. Still, Yumin found it a bit odd that Yizian would suggest it, especially since he had a girlfriend. Then he told her that his dad missed her too and would be happy if they could be friends again. It was then that Yumin realized the real reason behind his proposal. Despite this, she decided not to get upset about it and agreed to try being friends again. Hearing Hyundo say that, Yumin felt just as confused as she did yesterday, as his reaction wasn't what she expected. Now that he knew she agreed, he reminded her that she'd said her ex still made her heart flutter. He wanted to understand how Yumin could be friends with someone she had feelings for. Hyundo moved closer to her and asked if she planned to have a one-sided crush on her friend forever. He thought that would be even more pathetic, then realized what he'd blurted out. Hyundo didn't understand what was wrong with him or why Yumin's story was upsetting him so much. He lowered his head and apologized to her for what he said. Yumin thought he was saying it out of jealousy because things with his ex weren't going well, while she might still have a chance. Hyundo thought maybe she was right, as he couldn't otherwise explain why he was suddenly in such a bad mood. He admitted to Yumin that she was probably right, apologized again, and pleaded with her to look at him. Hyundo always had a way of getting on her nerves with his words. Usually she could brush it off since they weren't close, but things were different now. Suddenly, the guy knelt before Yumin, took her hands, and said he messed up. Hyundo begged for just one chance, and she agreed just to get him to stand up quickly because everyone was watching. She didn't understand why he had to grovel like that, but he wasn't good with words, so he felt it was better to be direct. As a peace offering, he wanted to make some delicious and healthy food and deliver it to her office whenever she was free. Yumin was annoyed that he thought she could be so easily won over with food, but a second later, she asked if she could order something off menu. Hyundo agreed, just asking her to let him know in advance so he could prepare the ingredients. He thanked the girl for accepting his apology. Yumin told him not to get cocky, as she planned to get her revenge while teaching him how to ride a bike. After renting a bike, she told him to get on, hold the handlebars, and pedal, but Hyundo found the explanation too brief. The girl told him to stop whining and get on, then took out her phone. She was going to document his first time riding a bike. Hyundo already regretted agreeing to this, as he was sure to look ridiculous since he couldn't ride. Watching him clumsily try to ride, Yumin kept giving the guy pointers. But he was clearly taking it much more seriously than she thought. The girl was already regretting being so mean, realizing she should have explained it to him better. But just as Yumin decided to go over and teach him properly, a dog ran into the road and Hyundo lost his balance. The guy fell off the bike, and Yumin rushed to help from one side, while the puppy's owner ran over from the other. The guy was sorry that the kid got hurt because of his dog, but he was still on the ground, even though he said he was fine. He refused the man's offer to pay for his medical bills, and Yumin realized Hyundo wasn't getting up because he was too embarrassed. After the stranger finally left, he told the girl it would be great if she left too. Yumin pulled the guy's hands away from his face and saw how badly he'd scraped his chin. Hyundo tried to tell her he was fine, but she lifted his face to check the huge scrape. Since the pharmacies were closed at this hour, Yumin wanted to run to a 24-hour convenience store for some bandages and ointment, but Hyundo suddenly took the girl's hands off his face and held them tightly in his. For a moment, they just sat there on the ground, gazing into each other's eyes. Yumin snapped back to reality, blushing, and apologized for startling him with her sudden touch. Hyundo said he'd had enough bike practice, and it was time to go home. The guy turned and walked away, and Yumin followed him in silence. Back at the office, the girls were wondering what to have for lunch, and Jae-hee suggested going somewhere to eat. Yumin suggested the cafe where Tae-gang works, saying it was amazing last time. She said they could go somewhere else, but her friend thought to herself that the more she denied it, the more obvious it was. In the end, they all agreed to go to the cafe, and a moment later, Tae-gang was greeting them at the shop. Hyundo turned around, and he and Yumin made eye contact. She pointed to the Band-Aid on his chin and whispered, asking if he'd treated the scrape. He nodded and turned away, and Yumin rushed to her friends who were calling her to the table. A few days later, our girl found a new shop online that had opened near Hyundo's place. She texted him about it, suggesting they check it out together, but the guy turned her down, saying he was swamped with work. A few more days passed, and Yumin went out to eat with Jae-hee. She reread her text with Hyundo for probably the millionth time, the ones where he kept turning her down. It felt like he was avoiding her for some reason, and even that time at the cafe, it seemed like he couldn't look her in the eye. She was so lost in thought that she didn't even hear her friend call her name several times. Jae-hee suggested Yumin have a drink, but she said no, she wasn't feeling well. Her friend was worried and asked if her not feeling well had anything to do with her staring at her phone lately, but she just smiled and said she was just a bit under the weather because of the changing seasons. Still, Jae noted that the fact she was staring at her phone was telling in itself. The girl put some food on her plate, hoping she'd feel better soon. After dinner, they decided to go to a cafe for a cup of coffee. Tae-gang joined them, as Hyundo had let him off work early today. Yumin was surprised as she thought the cafe would be busy, but Tae-gang said business had been slow lately. A new restaurant opened nearby and was stealing their customers. It was then that Yumin realized Hyundo wasn't ignoring her texts because he was busy with work. She left her friend and her boyfriend alone, stepped out of the cafe, and Hyundo called her. She answered and asked if he was feeling any better. He was surprised when he heard she was heading home, as he knew she was meeting up with Jae-hee and Taehyun. Yumin admitted she wasn't feeling well, and the guy started to panic. He told her to take some medicine, but she was sure she'd be fine and just needed some sleep. She decided to ask Hyundo if she'd done something to offend him, as she kept feeling like he was avoiding her. He said he hadn't been sleeping well lately, was tired, and his mind was a mess. He promised to hang out when she felt better and told her to go straight to bed when she got home. But Yumin still planned to do some work after hanging up. She decided to trust Hyundo, as he had no reason to lie about avoiding her on purpose. After working for a bit, she decided to go to bed, as she was feeling incredibly tired. Just then, she got a message from Hyundo. He texted that he'd left some medicine and ginger syrup at her door, just in case. She opened the door to find a bag of medicine tied to the doorknob. He apologized for showing up unannounced and hoped the medicine would help her get a good night's sleep. Yumin looked around, but the hallway was already empty. Hyundo was walking slowly down the street with his head down when he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Yumin calling his name, clutching the bag of medicine to her chest. The guy didn't understand why she was out when she wasn't feeling well, but Yumin couldn't help but chase after him to ask where on earth he found ginger syrup so late. He'd made a few jars himself, and she admitted she couldn't just let him go after receiving such a gift. Yumin suggested that Hyundo come up to her place for a bit. He froze for a second, asking in surprise if she was inviting him up at this hour. Yumin came to her senses and apologized, saying she didn't mean it like that and had completely forgotten the time. Hyundo smiled and said it was okay, telling her to go home and that he'd wait until she was inside. Yumin thanked him again for the package and promised to enjoy it. She told him to be careful on his way home and promised to repay his kindness. She rushed inside, slammed the door, and collapsed on the floor, feeling feverish and thinking her temperature had risen. Hyundo sat in his car, head on the steering wheel, cursing himself for being an idiot and going to Yumin's place so late. A few days ago, after their bike ride, he had thanked her for walking him home. After showering and cleaning his scrape, Hyundo lay in bed, thinking about Yumin being friends with her ex. Unlike him and Su Jong, they actually had a chance to make up and could hang out like they used to. He thought the guy must still have feelings for Yumin, and maybe she would only want to be with him. Hyundo thought that since he had contacted her, her plan was complete and there was no need for them to meet again. Even so, he wanted to see Yumin, especially since she considered him a friend. He tossed and turned, replaying the moment he held her hand in his mind, and suddenly realized his old insomnia had returned. A few days later, when he heard Yumin's voice in the cafe, he immediately turned around to confirm it was really her. After a quick greeting, he turned back, feeling his heart pound and his face burn. When she suggested they hang out, he thought she must still need his help with something and that their plan wasn't over. He felt a sudden sense of relief, but then reined himself in, becoming confused about whether he should keep seeing Yumin. The days passed like that, and even though Hyundo was avoiding her, she kept sending him messages. He couldn't figure out if she was just thick-skinned or if she simply didn't care whether he replied or not. So Hyundo decided to stay calm for now and meet her later. When he saw she had sent a video of him riding a bike, his first instinct was to tell her to delete it. But he watched it anyway, smiling as he listened to her voice and the way she gave him directions. He paused when he heard her tell him not to look back and to just go forward. Hyundo was surprised to see his own smiling face that Yumin had captured in that video. He put down his phone and was lost in thought. Now, sitting behind the wheel, Hyundo admitted to himself that he had deliberately refused to go up to Yumin's place. The truth was he wanted to stop by, make her a warm cup of tea, and cool her flushed face with his own hands. Hyundo remembered asking her how one could be friends with someone they liked, and suddenly realized he was a complete fool. Su Jong was on a cooking show with the recently popular chef, Kim Ma-sung. Su Jong admitted she was afraid of holding everyone back since she wasn't a good cook, but everyone was nice to her, explaining everything in detail. Su Jong especially hit it off with the restaurant head chef. The three of them joked on camera about Su Jong being captivated by the head chef's charm. Su Jong tried to keep her composure and play her part, flattering the chef, even though she felt sick to her stomach. It seems our actress threw up again, trying to pull herself together in the restroom. She told her worried manager that she must have eaten something bad yesterday, as her stomach was still hurting badly. They were talking about Chef Kim Ma-sung's hot new restaurant, which looked glamorous on the outside, but was rumored to have terrible food. She was annoyed at how this guy had become so popular and famous when she received a text. She smiled and asked her manager if she had any plans for the day, because Hyundo had just asked her out. Her assistant had a bad feeling, since they hadn't heard from the guy in a long time, and now he was suddenly contacting her. But Su Jong believed that even if Hyundo made mistakes sometimes, he wasn't the type to change completely. She had been busy and hadn't paid much attention to him, so now she needed to make time for him. The manager thought Su Jong was too naive, believing people don't change, but when it came to Hyundo, she always said the silliest things. Still, he couldn't help but wonder which of the two was the stronger one. I mean, was it the man who trusted no one but this one person, or the woman who managed to make him trust her so much? Yumin told Ji-hee that she planned to venture into clothing and shoes, but would start small, releasing just a few trial designs. Her friend thought it was too soon, as her brand hadn't really taken off yet, and it could be a risky move. Another colleague liked Yumin's idea, since accessories like keychains and wallets were selling quite well. The second colleague leaned more towards Ji-hee's side, although she thought expanding the product line was a good idea. However, since Yumin was so passionate about it, her friends couldn't dissuade her and decided to support her fully. And with that, their meeting ended and the protagonist thanked everyone for their hard work. Taejeon texted Ji-hee that their cafe was sending the girls beef rib soup for lunch. Yumin blushed and clutched her mug, listening to her friends talk about the upcoming lunch delivery. Ji-hee asked her friend if she liked him, and her friend, blushing even more, vehemently denied it. Yumin mumbled that he was a good person, but Ji didn't understand what she was talking about, as she had been asking about the soup. Ji-hee asked what Yumin was always drinking, and she showed her the ginger tea. When her friend asked if the drink wasn't too spicy to have so much of, she replied that after having the soup from the cafe, the tea was surprisingly sweet. The protagonist texted Hyundo that it was even better than her mom's cooking. Hyundo smiled and took off his headband. He decided to go out for a walk during his break. Taejeon saw Hyundo talking to someone through the window, and since he hadn't seen his friend on the phone outside in a long time, he guessed the guy finally had someone special. Meanwhile, Hyundo was talking to Yumin about how she was feeling, and she admitted the medicine and ginger tea had filled her with energy. He offered to make her more jam with different fruits, and Yumin said she could send him a bag from her brand, though most of her designs were for women. As Hyundo and Yumin chatted on the phone, two girls walked by, completely captivated by him. They were so smitten with the man that they decided to look for his social media on the restaurant's homepage. Even though Yumin kept telling him to stop treating her, Hyundo insisted it was no big deal for her. Yumin had a strange feeling and asked if he had added anything else to the jam, but it was just the usual stuff. When Hyundo returned to the cafe, Taejeon told him that Ji-hee and her colleagues loved the treat. He just didn't understand why the chef had decided to send them something special, since it wasn't even on the menu. Hyundo said they were their friends and had visited the cafe a few times. Not knowing what else to say, the guy claimed he was Taejeon's friend. It was for him. Seizing the opportunity, Taejeon asked if Hyundo would let him post his picture on their cafe's homepage. A new restaurant had opened nearby, and their reservations were dwindling, so they needed some publicity. As Hyundo was washing dishes, Su Jong came up from behind and gave him a hug, saying she was a little nervous about the cafe opening. If customers started taking his picture and posting it online, or if they got an offer to be on TV, it would be even harder for them to be seen together anywhere. Hyundo promised that wouldn't happen and suggested Su Jong come see him at his cafe sometimes. He told her not to worry, promising not to even say hello if needed, or they could meet after closing with the blinds down. In the end, Hyundo agreed to Taejeon's suggestion, and Taejeon was thrilled, as the owner's refreshed face would surely attract customers. Hyundo walked into the restaurant where they had agreed to meet. He went up to the second floor and entered a private VIP room where Su Jong was already waiting. When he asked if it was okay for them to meet in a place like this, Su Jong replied that a place like this was better than a cafe or home. Before he could tell her the reason for the meeting, she had something to tell him first. Su Jong regretted what she said the last time they met, when she asked if he wanted her to beg him to come back. She begged for his forgiveness and said she was truly, deeply sorry. She said she should have visited his cafe more often and that his cooking was even better now than when he used to cook for her. She suggested that Hyundo and she should find some time to hang out together. Hyundo admitted he wanted to see her regret it and try to come back, so he created that social media account and posted the photos, knowing she would find them. Jong knew that and understood he did it because he was hurt. But now that Hyundo heard the words he had been waiting for, he felt nothing, not even sure if he ever really wanted all this. He wanted to meet so he could finally end things, telling her to go on with her life and do her own thing, just like before. Jong grabbed his hand and asked if Yumin was the reason he was doing this, but he said it didn't matter. The actress told Hyundo that Yumin's ex-boyfriend was her first love, and what do you know, her stylist turned out to be that guy's sister. For what she told me, he has a stable job and a good family. His sister is a sweetheart, so her brother is probably the same. Jong said it was something they both wanted but couldn't have, but Hyundo didn't understand what she meant. The actress believed Yumin might be with him for a while, but she would eventually crawl back to her ex. People with easy lives stick together, while those of us with baggage find our own kind. Hyundo pulled his sleeve from Jong's grasp, ready to leave if she was done talking. He warned her not to even think about messing with Yumin or her company, but she wouldn't be that petty. She promised to wait for him, and as much as Hyundo hated it, he was the one who made her so persistent. As he left the room, he said none of it mattered because the ending would be the same. Jong begged him not to tell Yumin they were together, as she was famous, and it could be very embarrassing for her. Hyundo sighed heavily, glanced at her, and then stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Walking through the city at night, he wondered if Jong ever realized she was his first love too. He stopped abruptly as a thought hit him. Yumin might be with him, but she would always end up back with her ex. The next evening, Yumin and Jihee decided to have dinner at their friend's place, and maybe ask them out if they were free. Checking their cafe's homepage, she was surprised to see they had posted a picture of Hyundo. It seemed the guy had finally faced reality, and she decided to tease him about it later. Suddenly, her friend nudged her, and when Yumin looked up, she was stunned. The cafe was packed, and Jihee had never seen it so crowded. Taejeon happily greeted his girl, having saved a table for her in advance. When he asked where Yumin was, she said she had run into a friend on the way and would be over later. Taejeon suggested inviting them both to the cafe, and that's when Jihee admitted it was actually about her ex hearing this. Hyundo's hand slipped, and he cut his finger deeply. Yumin was sitting in a cafe across from Kim Ri-sang, who had brought her a gift. He had managed to get her an autograph from that short-haired actress. She was so obsessed with her. After a moment's thought, Yumin realized he was talking about Jong. She asked Ri-sang how he got her autograph. Last night, Kim Ri-sang and his friends were having a gathering at the same restaurant where Hyundo met Jong. He saw his neighbor walk into the restaurant, but he walked right past him without even noticing. Hyundo went up to the second floor, heading for the private rooms. Ri-sang thought to himself what a small world it was, running into people you know everywhere. Kim Ri-sang's college friends didn't know he and Yumin had broken up and kept asking about the upcoming wedding. They were very surprised to hear they had broken up and pressed Ri-sang about what had happened. They were sure he and Yumin were doing well and couldn't imagine what could have gone wrong. As the night wore on, Kim Ri-sang started getting ready to go home. One of his friends wished him the strength to forget his ex and start over. Ri-sang mumbled that he had no intention of forgetting her. As he was leaving the restaurant, he accidentally bumped into a girl who was walking with her head down at the exit. Ri-sang looked down and noticed she was carrying a bag from a brand his ex-girlfriend loved. Looking closer at the tear-streaked girl, he recognized her as the celebrity Yumin was so obsessed with. Ri-sang offered to call an employee to help her, but the girl refused, as no one was supposed to see her. Kim Ri-sang grinned, but his face was as white as a sheet, telling me that it was just a coincidence that everything fell into place yesterday for him to get the autograph. In fact, Yumin thought he got it from Ha-kyung, who was the actress's stylist, but Ri-sang didn't even remember that. The guy was always a bit clueless, and even though he didn't care about celebrities, he had somehow managed to get the autograph for Yumin. For Yumin, getting something like that through Ha-kyung would have been a piece of cake, and he had no idea. Ri-sang was the same as always. No matter if she liked him or they were just friends, he was always a good person. He asked Yumin if she wanted to have dinner together if she had time. Since he hadn't come empty-handed, she couldn't really refuse, so she agreed, but only if she paid. The girl rushed into the cafe, apologizing to her friends for being late. She said she was right on time, as they had just arrived themselves. Yumin greeted Hyundo, but he just gave a short reply. Taejeon, avoiding eye contact, said everyone was practically on the edge of their seats waiting for her to spill the tea about meeting her ex. Hyundo finally looked up at Yumin and said he was curious too, waiting with everyone else to hear the story. The girl apologized in advance if they were expecting something juicy, but she just felt it would be weird to turn him down flat. So they just had a meal together. Taejeon thought it was a sign he wanted to get back together, as no one waits for an ex after work just to give them an autograph. Ji said Taejeon just didn't understand how nice and considerate he was, but that was really all there was to it. As they discussed it, Yumin looked at Hyundo in surprise, for even though he said he was curious, he was barely listening to her story and had no reaction at all. Hyundo, with his head in his hand, was just staring blankly into the distance. Under the table, Yumin touched his shoe with the tip of her boot. Hyundo jerked his head up, looking at her, completely caught off guard. She whispered, asking him what was wrong and why he was so down. Hyundo blushed, frowned, and turned his head away from Yumin. Not understanding why he was ignoring her, she started tapping his leg frantically with the tip of her foot. But he suddenly and unexpectedly trapped her leg between his, holding it so tightly she couldn't even move. Taejeon asked Hyundo what he thought Yumin's ex wanted. Hyundo said he couldn't answer that, but what Yumin felt was more important. He squeezed her leg tighter and looked directly into her eyes, asking if she wanted to get back together with her ex. When Ha-kyung came to work, she overheard everyone talking about how terrible Su Jong looked and acted today. The actress sat in her car, trying to figure out why the man she threw up on yesterday only asked for an autograph and refused money for dry cleaning. The manager thought he was just a fan, but Su Jong didn't buy it, thinking he would blackmail her for money. The manager was going crazy because she had gotten drunk, which she never does, and called him for help in the middle of the night. Su Jong's story was that Hyundo had completely dumped her, and she was a mess over it. The manager told her to forget about the man anyway, as they had his business card right there. Su Jong saw the guy worked at a decent company, but she was startled by a knock on the door and dropped the card. Ha-kyung handed her some refreshing drinks and noticed she had dropped something. She picked up the business card from the floor and looked at it in surprise. She turned to Su Jong and asked, "Where did you get my brother's business card?" Ji-hee was against her friend getting back together with him, saying there was no need to stir up those waves again. She thought she needed to move on and meet new people, and looked to Hyundo for support. Hyundo, whose eyes never left Yumin, smiled and agreed with her, releasing her leg. Ji-hee had never seen Hyundo smile like that, and it creeped her out a little. Ji-hee was so excited for her friend that Taejeon suggested the two of them go out for a drink. As soon as they left, Yumin asked Hyundo what that was all about. She was terrified when he trapped her leg and shuddered at the thought of what would have happened if someone had seen them. Hyundo replied without batting an eye that he would have said he was just joking because it really was just a joke. But Yumin couldn't shake the feeling that he had done something he shouldn't have in front of everyone. She noticed a cut on Hyundo's finger, and he said he had cut himself while cooking, but didn't say what caused it. Yumin happened to have a Band-Aid with her and started rummaging through her bag. Since the Band-Aid was thin, she asked Hyundo for his hand so she could help him put it on. As she bandaged his wound, she said he was always getting hurt and thought he must be clumsy. Hyundo scoffed at that, waiting for Yumin to answer whether she wanted to get back together with her ex. She seemed happy enough just being friends, because if they got back together, she was afraid of feeling anxious and lonely again. Yumin had to admit her passion had faded, and Hyundo understood, as they had both been bound by their feelings. Back then, after a short pause, Hyundo suddenly told her that he had figured things out for himself. Yumin asked if he meant he was completely over his ex-girlfriend. He told her how he had finally broken up with her for good, and Yumin was surprised, knowing how hard that decision must have been for him. She suggested they have a drink to celebrate. Even though he acted like it was no big deal, it must have been a tough choice. Yumin suddenly asked if the photos Hyundo posted on social media had affected their relationship. But according to him, that wasn't at all. He made the decision because he no longer had feelings for her. So Hyundo told Yumin not to blame herself, and then suddenly said they should continue with their plan. He said the 2 months they agreed on weren't over yet, and Yumin hadn't made up her mind about everything. Hyundo promised to help her figure it all out, secretly hoping she would make the same choice he did. She was surprised he was willing to keep putting up with all this, but Hyundo claimed it was just a friendly favor for him. If Yumin was worried, she could just tell people she was helping to promote his cafe. Their friends were about to walk back to the table, noticed they were talking, and decided to take another walk to leave them alone. She was curious how business had been affected after Taejeon posted the chef's picture on the cafe's homepage. Hyundo said he regretted that decision because, besides the increase in customers, it also tested his patience. Yumin imagined him getting famous and being invited on TV shows and told him not to forget her when that happened. Hyundo suddenly became very anxious, saying that would never happen, and if that was what she was worried about, he wouldn't do it. Startled by his reaction, Yumin tried to convince him he must have misunderstood. She just wanted to ask him to remember to take her along when he became a big shot. Realizing he had misunderstood her, Hyundo calmed down, but still looked at her with a strange expression, not knowing why he was staring like that. Yumin worried she looked like a gold digger. Dinner was over, and everyone said their goodbyes, with Taejian suggesting they meet again before they all got too busy. They wished each other a safe trip home, and the couple said their goodbyes and parted ways. Hyundo snatched the autograph from Yumin's hand, saying he'd hold on to it for a bit, and she joked that he was going to steal it. Jihi looked back in surprise at what was happening. She saw the way Hyundo was smiling and teasing Yumin, and that's when she noticed the look in his eyes as he watched her friend. Su Jong was leisurely sipping tea in a cafe, waiting for the person she was meeting. Kim Ri-sang walked in, looking a bit nervous, and greeted the actress. After learning that the man she bumped into the other day was Ha-kyung's brother, Su Jong smiled and told her how they had met. Ha-kyung was surprised her brother hadn't mentioned it during their earlier conversation, but the actress explained that she had asked him not to. Hearing this, Ha-kyung quickly assured Su Jong she had nothing to worry about, as Kim Ri-sang always keeps his promises. As she explained that her brother couldn't care less about celebrities, Su Jong's mind was already elsewhere. She suddenly realized this man was Yumin's ex, and it couldn't possibly be a coincidence. She turned to Ha-kyung and asked her to help arrange a meeting with her brother, and so here she was. The actress sat across from Kim Ri-sang, claiming she wanted to apologize in person for what happened. Besides, she had a feeling that even though he asked for her autograph, he wasn't really a fan. Kim Ri-sang froze when Su Jong suddenly asked if the autograph was for Yumin. When asked how she knew Yumin, the actress said Ha-kyung had introduced them, and they sometimes hung out together. Su Jong was sure Yumin hadn't mentioned they knew each other because she had asked her not to. According to the actress, she also knew that he and Yumin used to be a couple. If she had known they had so much in common, she wouldn't have just given an autograph and left it at that. So Su Jong handed Ri-sang an envelope with money for dry cleaning and tickets to a musical, but Ri-sang insisted the autograph was more than enough. It wasn't necessary. Since that was the case, Su Jong asked him to at least take the tickets, so he could go to the musical with Yumin, who would surely love it. Kim Ri-sang didn't understand why the actress was wasting her time meeting him if she was already close with Yumin. Su Jong said she could tell Kim Ri-sang still cared about his ex after their breakup, even asking for an autograph for her, so she wanted to help them get back together because it would be better for everyone involved. Deep down, Su Jong knew it would be better for everyone except Hyundo. Kim Ri-sang thanked the actress, but asked her not to meddle in his affairs. Su Jong said that Yumin is a bright and ambitious woman who wears her heart on her sleeve and is always straightforward with people. If even she was charmed talking to the girl, then men must surely find her attractive. So Su Jong was sure that if Kim Ri-sang just let things be, he would definitely regret it later, just like her. Kim Ri-sang thanked her for the advice and prepared to leave. Since he didn't take the tickets, Su Jong intended to give them to Yumin. She hoped that when Yumin called Kim Ri-sang to ask him to go with her, he would agree and they would have a great time. The next day, our girl went to a business meeting about the company's expansion. When she returned to the office exhausted, her colleagues gathered around her, telling her to try the dessert waiting on her desk. The girls were gushing about Jihee's boyfriend, who had sent each of them a box of this delicious dessert. Even though Yumin immediately recognized them as the pastries Hyundo had treated her to, she pretended she had never seen them before. Watching her reaction, Jihee felt that each of them must have their own little story associated with this dessert. She racked her brain, trying to figure out when it all started, as Taejian was also clueless. Ji, dying to know what was going on between those two, suggested Yumin join her at lunch break tonight. She agreed, but just then, Ha-kyung called her. She said she was right outside Yumin's office because Su Jong had asked her to drop something off. Jihee was surprised her friend was still talking to Kim Ri-sang's sister, as she thought she had cut ties with his family after the breakup. When she stepped out of the office, Ha-kyung handed her the musical tickets and a note from Su Jong asking them to go together. That night, Taejian was frustrated because they had barely any customers today, even though they were swamped the week they posted Hyundo's picture. But his friend couldn't see the connection between a random chef's photo and customers flocking in. Hearing this, Taejeon racked his brain, trying to convince Hyundo to do another photo shoot. Just then, Kim Ri-sang and his friend walked into the cafe. He hadn't been able to call ahead because he got off work early and decided to drop by. Ri-sang's friend, Choi Jong-woo, saw Hyundo and apologized for seeing him drunk last time. Taejeon also met Hyundo's friends, whom he had never seen him with before. He went to the kitchen himself, leaving them space to talk. Choi Jong-woo was already stuffed with delicious food, but Hyundo still brought him dessert. He said that although these desserts weren't on the regular menu, he made things like this from time to time. While Jong-woo was praising the chef's cooking and baking skills, Hyundo was trying to figure out where Kim Ri-sang had disappeared to. It turned out the guy was on the phone. As soon as he returned, Choi Jong-woo pushed the dessert in front of him to try. Ri-sang loved it and told Hyundo he should start selling it. The day they met near his house, Hyundo was carrying a piping bag, and Yumin had assumed he just had a sweet tooth. Hyundo shyly lowered his head, admitting that was the day he fell in love with desserts. Meanwhile, Kim Isuin was staring at the cake, thinking that Yumin would definitely like it. When Hyundo returned to the kitchen, Choi Jong-woo was complaining about how rude it was for his friend to ditch them for a phone call. When asked if it was a work call, Kim Isuin said no and then blurted out Yumin's name. Hearing the name, Hyundo froze and whipped around. Kim Isuin went on to tell his friend that he was the one who had reached out to her recently. Just then, Hyundo appeared at their table, apologizing for the interruption and asking who they were just talking about. After returning home from work that evening, Yumin sat at her desk for a long time, rereading Soyoung's note over and over again. In it, the actress wrote that she needed the 2 tickets more and suggested Yumin invite her ex-boyfriend to the musical. The heroine couldn't believe Soyoung would think she was a fool who was still hung up on her ex. Besides finding the gift too extravagant, Yumin was also stressed that the musical was this week. At least she still had time to call Kim Isuin, which was also the reason she didn't go to siesta today. If he refused, Yumin had thought about asking Hyundo to go with her, but then remembered he had to work on Saturday. When Kim Isuin picked up the phone, the girl couldn't seem to muster the courage to ask him out, so she said she had run into Haikyung today and thought the 3 of them could grab lunch sometime. But when Isuin suggested meeting on Saturday, Yumin turned him down, explaining that she was going to a musical that day. The man immediately knew which musical she was talking about, but when he asked who Yumin was going with, she said she hadn't decided yet. She felt the reason it was so hard to ask Isuin was because she still didn't know if he was seeing someone. But he unexpectedly suggested they go to the musical together. Yumin blurted out, asking if he had a girlfriend. According to Kim Isuin, he wouldn't have asked her out if he was seeing someone. But she remembered him telling a drunk colleague that he was seeing someone, so she didn't know if he was lying then or if they had already broken up. After agreeing to text later to confirm the time and place, Yumin hung up, unsure if she should be happy right now. She never thought Isuin would want to get back together with her, and in theory, she should be thrilled about it. I mean, this was the best outcome she could have hoped for. Yumin just couldn't figure out why it wasn't making her happy right now. Maybe things would be simpler if Hyundo also got back together with his ex. But unlike her, he had already dealt with his past relationship and made it clear that he was single. The heroine collapsed onto the sofa and closed her eyes, not wanting to overthink anymore after an already bad day. Kim Isuin looked at Hyundo in surprise, saying he was just talking about his ex-girlfriend, Yumin. Hyundo stared at him with wide eyes, saying he also knew a girl with that name. The strange conversation was interrupted by Choi Jong-woo, who suddenly burst out laughing. The guy said he also knew a couple of girls with that name, and the boss had just asked the question with a straight face. It was a little scary. Realizing how ridiculous he must have looked, Hyundo apologized for butting in like that. But instead of leaving the table right away, he carefully sized up the man who perfectly matched Yumin's description. He was about to ask Kim Isuin how his ex-girlfriend was doing when Taegon shouted at him from the kitchen to hurry over, saying that more customers had come in and they needed the head chef's help. Hyundo went to work with his questions unanswered. Saturday arrived, and our girl was on her way to meet Kim Isuin. Since there was still some time before the show started, he suggested they take a little walk. Yumin had hoped this meeting would let her know if they could get back together, but she wasn't even sure if this counted as a date. As she walked, she wondered if everyone felt this awkward being with their ex after a breakup. Sitting next to Kim Isuin in the theater, Yumin suddenly realized that being with him wasn't as great as she had imagined. And from the way Isuin was acting, she was the only one feeling this way right now. She found herself overthinking every move she made around him. When Yumin went to the restroom to splash some water on her face, she felt exhausted from all the thoughts. She tried to remember what she used to think about when they were dating. This whole time with Isuin, she felt like a ghost, just watching everything from the sidelines. Looking at him, Yumin wondered if she really wanted to get back together or if she just needed confirmation that he still wanted to. Whether they ended up together or not, she really wanted to ask Isuin about that phone call. But then again, what was the point of asking? It wouldn't change the fact that he said it. Noticing her pale face, Kim Isuin caressed her cheek and offered to get her some medicine. She insisted she was fine, but he touched her forehead and found that Yumin was running a fever. She pushed his hand away, repeating that nothing was wrong with her. She turned away from Isuin and blamed it all on being tired from work, for which he apologized. Yumin wondered where they had left off in their last conversation. Kim Isuin said he had asked her to visit his father with him, but not wanting to be a burden to her now, he told her to forget about it and just visit him whenever she had time. She admitted it had been too long since she'd seen her teacher and promised she would definitely go. Kim Isuin offered to give Yumin a ride, and she headed straight for the parking lot while he stood still for a moment, gazing at the hand that had just touched her cheek. Back home, she collapsed on her bed without even changing her clothes. She felt emotionally and physically drained, wondering if it would always be like this from now on. Just then, Yumin noticed a text from Hyundo and replied that she hadn't seen his message because she was meeting her ex. The next morning, she saw that he had read her message but still hadn't replied. While eating breakfast, she told herself it was because it was late and he didn't want to bother her. But more time passed, and she still hadn't heard from him, even though she knew he was usually an early riser. When her phone buzzed, Yumin hoped it was a text from Hyundo, but it turned out to be her mom, saying she had hurt her leg and was at the hospital. She got dressed and tried to call her mom, but for some reason, her phone was off. As Yumin rushed out of her apartment, the phone rang, and thinking it was her mom, she anxiously asked what happened and how she was doing. But she was surprised to hear Hyundo's voice. On the other end of the line, she explained that she got a message saying her mom was in the emergency room. Yumin told him she would call back later because she had lent her car to a friend yesterday and needed to catch a cab now. But Hyundo replied that he would come over right away and drive her to the hospital. A few minutes later, his car was already parked downstairs, and she was surprised at how quickly he had arrived. After getting in the car, she thanked Hyundo for his help, but he said it was nothing. On the way, Yumin explained that her mom had texted about the injury, but she didn't know anything because she wasn't picking up her phone. Hyundo thought she shouldn't be so stressed, as her mom wouldn't have been able to text her if it were particularly serious. She agreed and then asked him why he had called. Hyundo said he called because he hadn't replied to her last night, and since he had the day off, he wanted to see her. At first, Yumin was annoyed that he had deliberately ignored her message, but then she forced herself to calm down. He didn't have to reply to her at all times, and it wasn't like she was really expecting him to. After a short silence, Hyundo looked at her and asked how it went with her ex. Without turning to look at him, Yumin said they just watched a musical and had dinner. Hyundo gripped the steering wheel tightly and asked if her heart fluttered, but she said that instead, she felt tired from overthinking. Yumin felt awkward talking about it and tried to change the subject. Arriving at the hospital, our girl found her mom in the waiting room with a cast on her leg. The woman turned to her daughter and complained that it seemed she had to end up in the emergency room just to get a visit from her. She knew Yumin would make a big fuss like this, which was why she didn't answer her calls. According to Miyu, she had wanted to bring her daughter some homemade food, but ended up tripping in the subway and spraining her ankle. She knew Yumin was too busy to come over herself, and now all the food would have to be thrown away. Since Hyundo hadn't had a chance to introduce himself, the woman asked her daughter who was standing behind them. Our girl introduced them and told her mom that Hyundo was a friend who not only drove her over after hearing what happened, but also promised to take her home. The woman smiled, saying she didn't know Yumin had such a handsome friend. Our girl suggested they go home, and Hyundo took the heavy bags from her. Miyu carefully scrutinized her daughter's dapper friend. Finally home, she told Yumin to throw away all the food from the bags, wash the containers, and get some snacks from the fridge. The heroine quietly thanked Hyundo, saying he could leave now, but he stayed to help. He promised it wouldn't take long, as he was good in the kitchen. Yumin knew that, but she thought he would want to relax at home on his day off. Seeing how skilled Hyundo was in the kitchen, Miyu asked if he was a chef, and he said he owned a restaurant. To stop the interrogation, the heroine rushed to her mom's side and suggested she go rest in her room. After all, on the way here, Miyu had hounded Hyundo with questions about his height, age, and so on. But the woman pushed her daughter away, telling her not to interrupt when her elders were talking. She then asked Hyundo if he lived alone, if he was seeing anyone, and what he thought of Yumin, to the girl's embarrassment. Realizing she had asked too much, the woman apologized to the young man for being nosy. Despite her extreme embarrassment, Hyundo didn't seem to mind at all and handled everything with ease. After cleaning up, they got ready to leave, and Hyundo thanked Miyu for the food she had packed for him and her daughter. To thank him for his help, she also offered him a free haircut at her salon whenever he had time. Hyundo returned the invitation to his restaurant, promising to cook something special for her. As for Yumin, she understood why her mom was acting this way, but she was worried her mom would get the wrong idea. Hyundo, however, didn't seem fazed at all. Watching them chat, she was surprised at how sociable he could actually be. Hyundo drove Yumin home and offered to help carry the bags upstairs because they were too heavy. Standing at the door, she thanked him again for his help, feeling bad for bothering him on his day off. But Hyundo confessed that he wanted to do it for her and was happy to help. Now he suggested she relax, as the past few days have been tough on her. Yumin smiled, even though she wasn't actually that tired today. She tried to take the bags from Hyundo, but for some reason, he just wouldn't let go. After standing there for a moment, she asked if he wanted to come in for a coffee. A little while later, they were sitting in Yumin's apartment, drinking coffee in silence. She couldn't understand the awkwardness between them, as it wasn't the first time they had been alone together. She was already starting to regret asking him in for coffee instead of offering to buy him lunch another day. Hyundo quickly finished his drink, and Yumin got up to take his cup. As she was washing the dishes, the man asked if he could look around her place, since he didn't get the chance last time. It was clean today, but Yumin complained that she couldn't keep it tidy because she was too busy with work. According to Hyundo, he cleans his place in the morning and at night. The girl laughed, pointing out that he only said that because she couldn't verify it. Then, the man leaned in a little closer and suggested she should come over to his place sometime to see. She had driven him home so many times, yet he had never once thought to invite her up. Hearing this, she started to scrub the cup so hard that the sleeve of her sweatshirt got wet. Noticing this, Hyundo carefully rolled up her sleeves for her. Then, standing extremely close, he added that he lived on the 5th floor. Apartment 502. In between takes, Su Jong checked her phone. Still no message from Yumin. She wondered if they had gone to the musical and how it went, as it was obvious Kim Isuin still had feelings for his ex. The actress hoped Yumin would get back together with her ex and stop pursuing Hyundo. Su Jong's manager came over, annoyed about the problem chef Mei-sung had caused. Aaron was supposed to be on that show, but the chef had run off abroad. The manager felt bad for the production crew, who were now scrambling to find a replacement. Just then, Su Jong realized she could recommend someone. The next day, a manager from a cooking show came to Siesta. After hearing the situation, Taegon excitedly called the chef to tell him the good news. Hyundo came out of the kitchen to learn that he had been invited to be on TV. Before closing up, the friends wonder how the show's crew found out about the chef. Taegon guessed they might have seen his picture online or that Sungha recommended him, but honestly, who cared? The most important thing was that the chef got this opportunity, and it was a no-brainer. Hyundo remembered Yumin saying that a small place like theirs needed to take any chance they could get. Taegon begged the boss to say yes, as he had to save up for his wedding. When he found out that Hyundo, who had previously refused to even have his picture uploaded, had accepted the offer, his friend hugged him excitedly. On the day of the shoot, the boss arrived at the studio early and started texting Yumin while he waited. Hyundo asked her to talk to him so he wouldn't be nervous, though she was sure he was playing it cool. He kept pressing her. Yumin was willing to chat, but she had an important meeting herself, and she promised to tell him how it went later. The door opened, and the other chefs from the show walked into the waiting room. One of them whispered to another that this chef was here to replace Chef Mei-sung, but he didn't even have overseas experience. When Hyundo stood up to greet them, the men were initially intimidated by his tall and sharp presence. But then the conversation turned friendly, and the chefs told the boss not to be nervous. A little later, they were talking about how Hyundo obviously got the gig with his looks, not his skills, because that's how the TV world works. They figured everyone was a chef these days, so they'd have to put up with this rookie until that bastard Mason came back. When the studio manager handed Hyundo his uniform, she overheard their conversation and thought to herself why everyone acted like children. She didn't understand why everyone had to give a hard time to the person who came to help. But on the other hand, it was none of her business, and the chef himself didn't seem to care much. Hyundo had completely blocked everything out, lost in thoughts of when he could see Yumin again. The cameras started rolling, and the host asked the audience to give a warm welcome to the new temporary chef. He then announced the special guests for today's show, rising star Aaron Shin and the famous actress Su Jong, who had kept her promise to return to the studio. Looking at the girl, Hyundo realized it couldn't be a coincidence and that she was the one who got him invited to the shoot. He never thought Su Jong would pull strings to get them on the same show, and he was trying to figure out what she was up to. Back then, her biggest fear was being photographed with him. Hyundo decided to ignore it, thinking Su Jong wouldn't make a move in public. According to the show's rules, each guest had to choose a chef to help them in the cooking competition. Su Jong walked past all the chefs and then stopped to choose Hyundo. She smiled, saying she hoped she and the chef would work well together. Meanwhile, Yumin finished a business meeting, thanking her colleagues for being willing to help her brand grow. After sealing the deal and saying their goodbyes, the heroine and her friend stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, Yumin couldn't hide her excitement about the meeting, but Jae-hee was another story. She wasn't sure if this contract was a good idea, though she now understood why everyone wanted to work with those big companies. Yumin, however, had a good feeling about it and was relieved that things were finally on the right track. Jae-hee had no doubt about that, especially since she knew it was affecting her friend's love life. Despite Yumin's claims to the contrary, she had totally noticed the way she and Hyundo looked at each other. She admitted they had been secretly dating recently, and Jae-hee couldn't understand why they had to keep it secret. Taegon had texted her that Su Jong would be on the show with Hyundo today, and she was telling Yumin all about it. She was surprised, as the actress had been on that cooking show not too long ago. After thinking for a moment, Jae-hee remembered that Su Jong had lunch at Siesta with her friends once. She remembered how excited and proud Taegon was when he told her about it. A funny thought crossed her mind, and she burst out laughing. Maybe when Su Jong saw Hyundo at the restaurant, she fell for him and orchestrated this whole show thing on purpose. Hearing this, Yumin told her very seriously not to joke about things like that. The reaction caught Jae-hee off guard, and even the heroine herself thought, "What is wrong with me?" To play it cool, she told her friend it wasn't right to gossip like that, and that it was most likely just a coincidence. She thought she was defending her two friends, but she didn't even realize how much the matter was actually bothering her. Her friend apologized for spouting nonsense without thinking, and Yumin apologized for overreacting. Passing by a poster of Su Jong, she decided to ask Jae-hee one more thing. Yumin wanted to know if Jae-hee would find it strange if she were secretly friends with a girl in addition to Hyundo. Jae-hee thought that unless the girl was some kind of secret agent or something, then yes. It was indeed a bit strange. The heroine felt that Su Jong just wanted to be careful because she was in the public eye. Maybe she couldn't relate because she wasn't a celebrity, but Yumin still felt something was off. Jae-hee asked if she had any amazing secret friends, but she said no, though her friend didn't quite believe her. Meanwhile, back at the studio, the competition had begun. Hyundo coldly gave Su Jong quick instructions, telling her what to do and when. The actress, startled by his distant tone, dropped a potato and bent down to pick it up. But as she stood up, her head hit a board, dislodging a knife that flew past her face. Hyundo reacted in an instant, pulling her into his arms as she clutched her head where it had been hit. They stopped filming for a moment to make sure the actress was okay. Su Jong apologized to the producer for her clumsiness. The man waved it off, saying it was no big deal and that the important thing was that no one got hurt. The producer praised Hyundo for his quick reflexes, but the chef acted as if it were nothing, saying he only reacted because he happened to be standing there. Hyundo gave the actress a cold look before turning back to his station, and the producer announced they were resuming the shoot. When the show was over and the chef was about to leave, Su Jong approached him. She had forgotten to thank him earlier, so she came to make up for it. But Hyundo just told her to be more careful next time. Su Jong swore she didn't do it on purpose and begged him to believe her. Hyundo said he believed her, then added that she should know he would have protected anyone in the same way. Although Su Jong had always liked that about him, it stung to hear it now. but she just said she knew, as she wasn't as naive as she used to be. The other chefs on the show were closely watching their conversation from the side. They were surprised that Su Jong would flirt so openly with a man who looked like a gangster. They thought it confirmed the rumors that she slept her way to the top. Meanwhile, Su Jong's manager asked them to cut the awkward scene, and the producer was happy to oblige, as the actress had been on their show twice already. However, that evening, a shocking news clip aired on TV, showing the chef rushing to save the actress without hesitation. The clip was like a scene from a romantic comedy. It went viral online, and as a result, Hyundo's follower count on X exploded. She watched as his popularity blew up overnight. Yumin found it strange, especially since he used to hate having his picture taken. Maybe they had been meeting so often that she was even starting to forget what he used to be like. Just then, a man reeking of alcohol approached her, asking if she had a boyfriend. Yumin told him she was waiting for her husband, and the stranger returned to his companions. They were sure she was just trying to get rid of him, so they decided to stick around and see. Yumin was about to leave when she suddenly heard Hyundo's voice from behind her. He joked that he wasn't exactly looking forward to spending the night with her husband. Startled, Yumin asked how long he had been there, and Hyundo said he came over as soon as his restaurant closed. He thanked her for waiting, worried she might be cold, and said she should have waited for him in a cafe. Besides, it was dangerous to be out on the streets at this hour. He glared at the men, who scurried away upon seeing that the girl really did have company. Yumin wondered how Hyundo felt about becoming famous, and if it was stressing him out. The man confessed that the only thing he was worried about was what she would think after seeing it. The heroine blushed upon learning that he wanted to hear it from her in person. To hide her embarrassment, Yumin turned away and replied that he was amazing and that she could never do the same. But according to Hyundo, one could never be sure, as everyone does something without thinking sometimes. He was sure that if Yumin were in a similar situation, she would have acted the exact same way. The girl, who was walking up the stairs, suddenly stopped and turned to face Hyundo. Before he could process what was happening, she grabbed his shoulders and kissed him straight on the lips. Perhaps she instinctively realized that as long as she hid in this man's arms, he could protect her from any harm. Even with his cold exterior, he always managed to support her and make her feel better. He might be clumsy about it, but she knew he would always be there for her. Even though she hadn't known Hyundo for long, she could say with absolute certainty that he was a good person. He was a considerate and loyal friend and a helpful neighbor. And Hyundo would never hurt her the way Isuin did. At that moment, Yumin was the first to understand just how good he was. And the people on social media would never know how warm and fiery his gaze could be. After the kiss, Hyundo and Yumin looked at each other for a moment. Then she suddenly looked away while he, still holding her hand, asked her to explain what that was just now. Yumin sat down on the steps and apologized for her impulsiveness without even looking at him. But Hyundo wasn't asking for an apology. He asked if she really regretted the kiss. The girl buried her head in her knees. Without a word, Hyundo sat down beside her and said that if she regretted it, he wouldn't know what to do. He brushed her hair aside, and she finally admitted she didn't regret it. She was just embarrassed. Hyundo said if it was because she did it in public, she didn't have to worry, as it was dark and no one probably saw them. Yumin told him to stop talking about the kiss, and he told her to stop hiding her face, since he was the one who got kissed, not her. The girl confessed she was hiding so she wouldn't do it again, and Hyundo smiled, saying he liked everything she did to him. The heroine was stunned by how he could make something so messy sound so romantic. Yumin explained that she apologized because her kiss wasn't pure. That was a selfish and petty move. The heroine had been second-guessing her feelings, trying to figure out if he felt the same way about her. So she acted without thinking, not really knowing what she wanted. Instead of feeling her heart flutter from the kiss, Yumin was angry at herself for being so reckless. He probably thought she was shallow now, acting like a teenager even though she was older. But just then, looking at Yumin, Hyundo realized something too. Maybe her intentions weren't perfect, but she was still a rather innocent girl. Liking someone was never completely clear or pure, which is why people often held back when expressing their feelings. The way Yumin was agonizing over her impure thoughts was kind of cute. Still, if this girl decided to be with him, he was willing to discover every side of her. In fact, Hyundo wanted to know everything about her. After all, he was no saint himself, you know. He turned to her and confessed that her selfishness excited him. And just like he said before, he liked whatever Yumin did to him. No matter what happened, no matter what she did, he was ready to accept it. Hearing this, she turned away again, stubbornly refusing to let him see her face. She didn't understand how it was possible not to be moved by such words. Suddenly remembering something, she turned her head and glanced at Hyundo. She knew how devoted and selfless he was once he fell in love. He was willing to give everything for the person he loved, and all he needed in return was love and support. And that was precisely why Hyundo's last relationship had ended so miserably. Yumin confessed that before getting serious with someone new, she needed to completely cut ties with her ex. She promised it wouldn't take too long and asked if Hyundo would be willing to wait for her. He smiled and promised that he would definitely wait, then rested his head on her shoulder. The next day, everyone at the company noticed Yumin's unusually cheerful mood, and they whispered among themselves, guessing what was making her so happy. Everyone guessed that she had closed a new business deal. Just then, the door opened, and Sun Yoon-ha from WM Fashion walked in. She greeted everyone and announced that she would be working with them starting today. Sun Yoon-ha introduced herself to CEO Yumin and thanked her for the opportunity. Yumin said she hoped to learn a lot from her, but Sun Yoon-ha said she was here to collaborate. As Sun Yoon-ha was getting to know the other team members, Yumin greatly admired her enthusiasm. She had been worried about how the new girl would fit in, but now it seemed everything was going smoothly. Our girl was full of motivation for new beginnings in both her career and love life. To start a new life, one must first get rid of past baggage. After 6 years together, Yumin's apartment was filled with things, some of which needed to be returned to Lee Soo-woo, while the rest was trash. While sorting through her things, she found some envelopes full of old photos. She felt it was strange to throw away someone else's photos, so she decided to give them to Hak-young. Looking at a photo of her teacher, she remembered him saying that he considered all his students his own children. Yumin felt a bit awkward about doing this, but she was determined to have a fresh start, so it could no longer be avoided. Meanwhile, Hyundo was waiting for the elevator when Kim Il-sung and his friend walked into the lobby. Choi Jong-woo was chattering away, bragging about how he had witnessed the chef's rise to fame and now went around telling people they were close. Hearing that Hyundo hadn't had dinner yet, he invited Hyundo to eat with him and Il-sung as they were about to order takeout. Kim Il-sung was placing the order and asked him what he wanted to eat. Hyundo thought for a moment and offered to cook dinner for them himself. As Choi Jong-woo drooled over the feast on the table, Il-sung apologized to him for making the chef cook. Hyundo insisted that it was nothing to whip something up with the ingredients in the fridge. They poured soju into their glasses and raised a toast to thank the chef. Choi Jong-woo asked how the two of them became friends and hoped he could become friends with Hyundo too. Later, when the other guy went to the restroom, Il-sung asked how the kitten they had rescued was doing. Hyundo took out his phone to show him some pictures. While Kim Il-sung was busy looking at the kitten, Hyundo slipped into the kitchen for a moment. Suddenly, a message from Yumin popped up, and when he saw her name on the screen, he froze completely. After Hyundo returned, Il-sung handed him the phone, saying he was happy for the kitten. He was about to ask about the message when the phone suddenly rang. Hyundo apologized, saying he needed a moment to take a call. He went into another room, racking his brain to figure out whose number it was, but decided to answer anyway. A woman's voice came from the other end, introducing herself as Su Jong's mother. The woman was glad Hyundo hadn't changed his number, especially since they hadn't been in touch for several years. When he asked why she was calling, she said he was still as difficult as ever, as if she needed a reason to call her favorite son-in-law. Hyundo held his head in his hands, remembering that she only ever called when she wanted something from him. He told her not to call anymore, as he and Su Jong had already broken up. But the woman demanded an explanation, asking why they had both lied to her. The reason she hadn't called Hyundo again was because Su Jong had told her they broke up, but seeing them look so close on TV had taken her by surprise. Hyundo replied coldly that he didn't know what she was talking about, and whatever it was, she was completely mistaken. He told her not to call this number again, and hung up, not wanting to continue the conversation. After hanging up, Hyundo let out a heavy sigh and sat alone in the room for a while, lost in thought. Meanwhile, Choi Jong-woo returned from the restroom and wondered why Il-sung was drinking alone. Hearing that Hyundo was on the phone, he suddenly noticed that his friend's expression was a bit off. When the owner returned, Choi Jong-woo asked if he had been talking to his girlfriend. When Hyundo said he didn't have a girlfriend, he found it strange that he had gone to another room specifically for the call. Then Il-sung asked if he was on the phone with that person from the project, and while Hyundo was impressed by his good memory, he said it was just a wrong number. So Il-sung was curious if they were still friends with that person. While Choi Jong-woo sat by, completely confused. An image of him and Yumin kissing flashed through Hyundo's mind. He couldn't hide his smile and admitted that he could no longer call her just a regular friend. When asked why Yi-sung was suddenly so interested, he said that right before the phone rang, he had received a text message while looking at the photos. Choi Jong-woo complained that now everyone had a girlfriend except him, but Hyundo was already distractedly starting to text Yumin. She said she had been cleaning her apartment, but got too tired and fell asleep. He wrote back that he was at home drinking with friends. After sending the text, Hyundo asked if Yi-sung was seeing anyone, and Choi Jong-woo chimed in that he was close to getting back together with his ex. Just as Yi-sung was explaining that things weren't as he had hoped, Hyundo had already buried his face back in his phone. Yumin was jealous that he cooked for his friends, and he texted her that he would do even better if she just came over, since she knew the address. The girl said she wasn't the type to be won over by a meal. Realizing he had been distracted and needed to say something, Hyundo turned to Yi-sung and said he was glad things were turning out well. According to Kim Yi-sung, it was all thanks to his and Choi Jong-woo's advice, so he promised to introduce his ex to them after they got back together. 6 years ago, Yumin had gone to see her teacher, who had discovered her relationship with his son, and she apologized for not telling him sooner. The gentleman didn't understand why she looked so guilty if she hadn't done anything wrong. It was then that he said he considered all his students his own children. All he wanted was for his children to be happy. Yumin smiled and said that if she and Yi-sung got married, she could rightfully call him dad. Now, 6 years later, our girl stood before the same door, gathering the courage to go inside. The teacher opened the door and welcomed the girl in with a big smile. Yumin apologized to teacher Kim for taking so long to visit him. She had wanted to come sooner, but just couldn't muster the courage. The man looked at the girl with eyes full of fatherly love and concern. Teacher Kim patted her on the shoulder and thanked Yumin for finally coming, saying he was very happy to see her. The teacher led the teary-eyed girl into the house and had her sit on the sofa, hoping she would calm down. He told her she shouldn't cry, because now with her swollen eyes, she looked like an alien. But Yumin admitted she couldn't help but cry the moment she saw him and finally asked how he had been. Hearing that he was doing well, she told him about her business and mentioned that Hak Young had wanted to come too, but she had refused him. The girl promised that next time she and her friend would definitely take teacher Kim to an amazing restaurant. The teacher was surprised that Yumin always had endless things to tell him, so he found it strange that she hadn't visited for so long. He felt that breakups were common and not a big deal, and she shouldn't feel awkward about it. Teacher Kim wondered if their breakup was Yi-sung's fault. Even though he was his own son and he was his father, he had to admit that the boy could be a real headache sometimes. Seeing that she didn't answer, teacher Kim decided to change the subject and asked her to stay for dinner. Yumin agreed. The teacher waved off her offer to help, told her to get some rest, and went into the kitchen. The heroine heard the front door open and thought Hak Young had finally decided to come. Yumin excitedly rushed to the door, not hearing teacher Kim say that his daughter was working late tonight. The girl flung the door open and then froze, seeing Kim, Yi-sung standing there. A short while later, the three of them were eating dinner in complete silence, with only the sound of chopsticks hitting plates. Teacher Kim broke the tense silence and asked his son why he had come so suddenly, and he replied that Hak Young had said he was unwell. The father realized that his daughter must have done this on purpose to set her brother up with Yumin. Seizing on his daughter's brilliant idea, teacher Kim asked his son to drive the girl home after dinner, since she hadn't brought her car. The heroine replied that she could take the bus, but Yi-sung reminded her that the buses didn't run on weekends. The girl realized it would be strange to refuse, so she agreed. After dinner, teacher Kim came out to see them off, and she said goodbye, promising to call him more often from now on. On the way, Yi-sung thanked Yumin for visiting his father, but she claimed it was her pleasure. The man asked how her business was doing, and the girl said she had signed a contract with a large company. Yi-sung was confident that Yumin would succeed, and she herself had no doubt about it. They drove in silence for a while until he finally decided to ask the big question that had been bothering him. Looking at her, Yi-sung asked if she was seeing anyone right now. Yumin said no, but added that she had someone in mind. She said he was a good person and that she wanted to get to know him better and maybe date him. Yumin hoped that Yi-sung would find a good girl too. He replied that he had already found one, but unfortunately, they had broken up. She admitted she had wanted to make him feel bad, but had apparently failed as he still thought she was a good person. In her opinion, it was impossible for anyone to be that bad in Yi-sung's eyes. Although he didn't understand what she was talking about, Yumin told him to forget it, saying she was exhausted and wanted to sleep. After arriving at her home, she thanked Yi-sung for the ride and was about to leave, but he asked her to wait. He wanted to know if she had broken up with him just to torture him and what he had done wrong when they were together. Yumin stopped and asked if she could ask him something. If Yi-sung wanted to thank her, he could have just dated her and then dumped her, so why did he keep stringing her along? She had heard him say he never loved her, so there was no point in denying it now. He had said on the phone that he was only marrying her to repay a debt of gratitude to someone. Yumin didn't know if he had ever desired her, if he had ever felt he couldn't live without her, or even if he cared about her feelings for him. She admitted that she had thought she would feel better if he tried to win her back, but now that it was actually happening, it just made her thoughts even more jumbled. Yumin wondered why he was doing this if he didn't love her, and if it was because she was an easy target now. Yi-sung walked towards her and admitted that he had never thought of her that way. He was sorry she had overheard those words, as he had never intended to hurt her. Just because he wasn't head over heels in love with Yumin didn't mean he didn't care about her. He felt at ease when he was with her. You know, he wanted Yumin to be happy, and he wanted to be the one to make her happy. He looked into her eyes and said, if this isn't love, then what is it called? In his opinion, intense passion wasn't the only way to express feelings. Back when Kim Il-sung was 17, he had a real heart-to-heart with a close friend. Another girl had shown up at his school, ready to confess to him, but Kim Il-sung couldn't understand the concept of dating someone he didn't like. Making friends was never a problem, but he had never developed romantic feelings for anyone. Jong joked that his friend was a total weirdo, but Il-sung was very frustrated, wondering what was wrong with him. Jong asked if he had problems in that department, but he denied that too, saying everything was in working order. So his friend concluded there were only two possibilities left. Either Il-sung hadn't met the right person yet, or he was just born this way. I mean, some men like women, some like both men and women like him, and some, well, they just don't like anyone. Jong thought Il-sung should just accept it and move on with his life. It wasn't until he was older that he understood what his friend meant and stopped worrying about his romantic life. He used to think he was flawed, but then he realized he was just different. Il-sung decided that he would start dating when it was time to settle down. It wasn't until he met Yumin that things changed. She was one of his father's students, a very kind person, and seemed to like him. There were many girls around, but Il-sung never gave her a second glance until she did his father a huge favor. She went all out for his family, and he was deeply moved by her loyalty. It was then that he suddenly realized that if his soulmate was a person, she would have to be just like Yumin. So Il-sung decided to reciprocate Yumin's feelings as a way to repay her kindness. He knew deep down that he could never love her the way she deserved, but he swore to himself that he would do his best for her and make her as happy as he could. Il-sung had been sure that Yumin knew he was only with her out of guilt and gratitude, but gradually, the girl's affection began to move him. Even though his feelings weren't exactly what she wanted, to him, it was still love. He was happy with her, and that's what mattered. That must be love. Look, I know this is hard to understand, but I don't know how else to say it. But when I said I loved you, I meant it. I really do love you. And when I said I wanted to repay you, it wasn't just because you helped my family. What I really meant was that this was my chance to be with you forever. Hearing this made her even more furious, because he should have been honest with her from the beginning. He should have just admitted that he wasn't capable of that kind of love. I'm sorry, I was a selfish bastard, okay? He reached for Yumin's hand, begging her to give him another chance. Maybe the way I love isn't enough, but I've always been sincere with you. She slapped his hand away, telling him it was too late for that now. Suddenly, she noticed a crowd of onlookers gathered at the entrance and on the balconies, urging her to forgive the man. One of the neighbors pulled her husband away, telling him not to get in the young couple's way, saying they only came out because of the noise. Yumin told Il-sung it was too late, and he promised to leave as soon as he saw her go inside. The heroine immediately turned and walked into the building, and before she disappeared from sight, he asked if he could call her. The girl turned around and told him not to call until she called him. Meanwhile, Hyundo was trying to contact Yumin, but her phone was off for some reason. He knew she had gone to her ex-boyfriend's father's house, who was also a teacher, but she hadn't replied to any of his texts since then. At the same time, Kim Il-sung was driving home, not noticing that Yumin's phone had fallen under the passenger seat. Back home, she took off her coat and collapsed onto the sofa. Recalling her conversation with Il-sung, she tried to figure out how someone could love you without having those kinds of feelings for you. Love wasn't supposed to be that complicated. Yumin just wished things could be much simpler. Early in the morning, Choi Jong-woo stumbled out of his house, yawning. He was yawning his head off when he ran into Hyundo outside, who was just returning from a run. Jong-woo was up early to beat the traffic on his way to a business trip. Jong-woo had never seen the guy so excited about something. As soon as she got to the office, Yumin used her computer to send a message to Lee-sung. She asked if her phone had fallen into his car. Last night, she was a bit embarrassed, having just told him not to call, only to message him the next day. But she had no choice, as she had been looking for her phone all morning and couldn't find it anywhere in her house. It turned out Lee-sung had lent his car to a friend for a business trip, so he promised to call and ask for her. Suddenly, the girl noticed a flood of messages from Hyundo, who must have been worried sick about her being unreachable. Yumin immediately wrote back, saying she was fine and had just lost her phone, which was why she was only now seeing his messages on her work computer. As she typed, nothing special happened. The heroine wondered if that was really the truth. Hyundo replied instantly, saying he was glad Yumin was okay and offered to bring her lunch later, as he wanted to see her. Ji looked at her friend in surprise, as she had been on edge a minute ago, but was now smiling for some reason. Yumin suggested to Hyundo that they meet after his restaurant closed and hoped to have found her phone by then. After agreeing to meet, the man hung up, relieved that she wasn't intentionally avoiding him. He realized that, for once, things in his life were unfolding in a completely different way. Su Jong was sleeping when her phone, right by her ear, rang and woke her up. The girl woke up and answered the call, hearing her mother's voice, who was surprised she was already asleep. Su Jong asked why she was calling, if she needed money. The woman was offended that her daughter thought she only called to ask for money. Su Jong grumbled that she usually didn't call for any other reason. According to her mom, even if Su Jong thought she was only good for giving money, the woman firmly believed she was entitled to compensation for giving Su Jong life. The girl cut her off, demanding she explain what she meant by them being even. She wanted to know if her mother had called Hyundo for money too. The woman quickly apologized for calling so early and hung up, leaving her daughter completely bewildered. A little later, Lee-sung told Yumin that his friend had found her phone in the car. It turned out he had found it before they left, so he had left it on the living room table at his house. So Lee-sung, who had left in a hurry this morning, probably hadn't even seen it. Yumin wanted to pick up the phone after work, but the man said he wouldn't be home until 8 at the earliest, so he suggested she go get it herself, saying the apartment code was still the same. Yumin felt it was strange to go to his place by herself when he wasn't there, especially since they had broken up. Anyway, she had a ton of things to do, so she would go over later when he was home. Lee-sung promised to try to get back as early as possible. She knew Hyundo wouldn't be home until after 10, so it would be great if she could get her phone before then. So she decided to get her phone first and then wait for him to finish work at the park. Just as she had planned, Yumin went to Lee-sung's place. He handed her the phone, which looked like its battery was dead, and she thanked him and apologized for the trouble. She glanced at her watch and realized she still had some time. She was about to leave when Lee-sung asked if she had driven, but Yumin said she had to meet someone. Kim Lee-sung offered to walk her to the main intersection so she wouldn't have to walk alone in the dark and call the elevator. When the elevator doors opened, Yumin was suddenly face to face with Hyundo standing inside. The girl in the bucket hat and mask stood in front of the closed cafe, where a note on the door said they had run out of ingredients for the day. Taegon, who was coming out to take out the trash, approached and explained to her that they had closed early today. The girl took off her mask and asked why the restaurant owner wasn't there, and the man recognized her as Su Jong. The actress confirmed his guess, remembering they had met once before when she came to their place for lunch. Su Jong admitted she wanted to talk to Mr. Hyundo, and Taegon guessed she must have fallen for him after he saved her on that show. He suddenly realized she must be the one his friend was dating now. Su Jong, sensing Taegon might be shocked, offered to show him their text messages as proof of her relationship with Hyundo. Su Jong was looking for a small favor from this guy. Hyundo was resting at home when his phone buzzed. He snatched it, thinking it was Yumin. It turned out to be Taegon, who for some reason texted that he had messed up but would apologize in person later. Hyundo thought his friend had broken another plate at the restaurant, just sighed, and put his phone down. Just then, the doorbell rang, startling the man. He remembered giving Yumin his apartment number and hoped it was her standing outside. He excitedly opened the door to see her, but his face fell when he saw Su Jong. While Hyundo was still wondering how she got his address, she barged in, saying they needed to talk. She took off her wig and explained that she had been to the restaurant, and Taegon had kindly given her the address. Su Jong told him not to be angry, She just wanted to ask him something quickly. She wanted to know if he had ever given her mother money. Hyundo admitted it had happened a few times before she moved into her new apartment. Learning that he had given her money more than once, Su Jong asked why she knew nothing about it. With tears in her eyes, she started hitting him, trying to understand why he had paid for her apartment, given her mother money, and even did everything for her when he was struggling himself. She didn't understand why he wasn't angry or asking her pay it all back. Hadn't he ever thought about how humiliated she would feel when she found out about all this? Hyundo pushed Su Jong away and replied that he was only thinking about keeping her mother from bothering her. Although he felt there was no point in talking about these past events now, she told him that for her, it wasn't over. She calmed down, wiped her tears, and admitted that no normal person would ask their daughter's boyfriend for money. When Su Jong started making money, her mother claimed she had to pay for the beautiful face she had given her. She threatened to go to Hyundo for money if she didn't get her way. So the girl had to lie and say they had broken up. Apparently, Hyundo knew exactly what kind of person her mother was, but he never blamed Su Jong for it, and she couldn't understand how he could love her so unconditionally. If he could stay with her after everything that woman did, why was he dumping her now? Su Jong, in tears, asked if it was because she was worse than her mother. The girl grabbed Hyundo's sleeve again, apologizing for making him feel lonely because of her greed. She promised not to make the same mistake again and begged him to reconsider. But Hyundo shook off Su Jong's hand and coldly told her to calm down and go home. He called a taxi for her and walked her to the elevator to see her off. Just then, the elevator stopped on the 4th floor, and he looked up from his phone to see Yumin standing there. Kim Il-sung greeted his neighbor, guessing he must have closed the restaurant early tonight. He stepped into the elevator and called out to Yumin, who was for some reason lagging behind. As the elevator descended, Hyundo's eyes remained fixed on the girl, who kept her head down. Finally, she looked up and met the man's intense gaze. Hyundo turned his head away, and just then, Yumin heard someone sobbing behind her. She turned around and saw a girl standing in the corner, suddenly noticing the phone in her hand. The girl remembered that Su Jong's phone was the exact same model, a very unique color. She stared intently at the girl, hardly believing she was actually here. The elevator finally reached the 1st floor, and the three of them, except for Hyundo, walked out in silence. One after another, without hesitation, the girl suddenly stopped in her tracks. Yumin suddenly realized this whole thing was wrong, that she couldn't just leave Hyundo like this. She was about to tell Il-sung that she couldn't do this when someone suddenly grabbed her arm. She turned around and looked straight into Hyundo's eyes, feeling her heart pound wildly. The man silently pulled Yumin into the elevator and turned to Su Jong, wishing her a safe trip home. Both she and Kim Il-sung stood there in shock for a few seconds, not understanding what had just happened. Coming to his senses, Il-sung chased after Yumin, not understanding what Hyundo was doing, but the elevator doors slammed shut in front of him.